Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a great week, and I'm welcoming you all to a wonderful weekend. My name is Alexander, also known as Senrievitz, and I am accompanied by my brother,
Lord here. Hi guys.
Today we're gonna be discussing having yet another podcast of the Nioh 2. Yes, the game cannot let go us totally and fully. The topic of our podcast for today is quite provocative and interesting. We will mainly focus on the theme of how the toxicity of Nioh 2 is ruining both the experience of newcomers and veteran players, as well as the feedback for the developers.
And mostly, those who suffer the most from the community are none other than newcomers, because as we've said to you, this game does a very poor job of explaining anything to you, anything meaningful to you, and if you were going to, not like if you were going, when you were going to have a question that is going to be related to this or that aspect, you will going to meet with the community. And for every game, the community is one of the most crucial things when it comes to receiving some advices, when it comes to sharing your experience with one another, as well as giving developers a feedback. And today we will going to do our best to explain why exactly does Nioh 2 community fail tremendously when it comes to those already mentioned things.
True, and those discussions would be in the same format as we did previously, so it's not an in-depth explanation of everything that had happened behind the scenes or had happened during our streams, etc. Nonetheless, I will be providing some examples both from my parts, from the parts of my brother's he'll share his experience of encountering and experiencing or reliving the moment of speaking with members of the community in Nioh 2, as well as the experience of others in the first half of the video, in the first half of the podcast, and later on we'll be reading some of the comments from one of the toxic swamp called Reddit. Yes, why and how exactly the influence of the community shapes the mind or the thought process behind some thoughts, some constructive thoughts, and turns them upside down, forces them to actually become irrelevant in the sense that you actually are not going to see any kind of improvement, any kind of significant improvement for the sequel. On the other hand, you'll face like a degradation of things or regress. Anyway, that's gonna be like the main podcast. But before we get things started, if you're watching this on Patreon, first of all, huge thumbs up for supporting us on Patreon. We are appreciating that, and more videos to come exclusively on that platform. If you're watching this on YouTube, do note that supporters on Patreon have the opportunity or privilege to watch videos ahead of time before they are going to be uploaded directly on YouTube channel. Nonetheless, that's not the mandatory option. Still, this is something that we would like to inform you of its existence. Without further ado, let's get things started. Phew, this is going to be so painful to even relive that kind of moment, but I'm gonna try my best to recreate the experience that I have, the uniqueness, let's just say it like this, of Nioh 2 community. Whenever I just started playing this game, and the moment I started sharing my videos, my thoughts of the game mechanics, of some advantages or disadvantages that it has to public, both on such platforms like Facebook groups, Reddit, Discord, YouTube, you name it, like Twitch, I had encountered a severe backlash on every constructive criticism that I had in regards to some of the game mechanics that I was having trouble to understand, like, why do they exist in the first place, and why their functionality is so garbage, to the point where you can see that the developers themselves haven't actually do any kind of good testing to justify their inclusion in the game itself. What am I talking about? I'm talking about, of course, as we have discussed before, that's one of the topics that I'm going to share right now, the difficulty, mostly the artificial difficulty, or how easily it could be broken even on the first mode on the Way of the Samurai. Well, when I was playing through the Way of the Samurai, for the first half of my playthrough, I was using heavy armor and two-handed axe, combined with slot. And when you use slot, it's kind of funny for me to produce like the well combined and well logical like sentences in regards to me trying to not use vulgar words or offensive words in this sense, but nonetheless I'll try my best, like I've told you. When you use slot, it turns this game into, especially against bosses, it turns this game into a freaking joke. Like, you can, especially with the heavy armor user, keep in mind that two-handed axe is not like an overpowered weapon by no means, shape, or form, but more on that later. I was demolishing everything. Like, I had no problem. I had knew already how the system works, how the base system works in terms of magic, ninjutsu, buffs, debuffs, etc. So it wasn't really that problematic for me to understand what was the fastest way, even though I can add to this that I have not used lighting. Things could have been even more easier than before in terms of fighting difficult enemies or bosses, so I was using slot, right? And no bosses, not in the first half of the game, was giving me any sort of challenge. And keep in mind, I've completed everything there. I haven't skipped the single freaking bit of the content. So I was like wondering, that's the correct word, like, or questioning of like I've put my post there, my videos, like, when is the game is going to become like somewhat remotely hard? Because for me it was like not necessarily snooze fest, but more so it starts to lean itself to the borderline of being boredom. Yes, I died occasionally a few times just because I did not know, like on the first difficulty, you don't know enemy's position, you don't know their moveset, etc. But when it comes to bosses, it was mostly a matter of literally pummeling through them. Like, it turns itself into a joke. So I was like expressing this, and keep in mind, I wasn't my initial reaction wasn't a show-off attempt at me being like a freaking expert at the game. I was just asking question like, when the game is gonna become hard? Because right now it is mostly like a snooze fest, or like it's so easy to the point where I have no pure or genuine motivation to continue like playing through the game on the first difficulty, believe it or not. So the reaction to that from the majority, and yes, I should have said this from the very beginning, yes, I'm aware that every game had its share of toxic fanboys, white knights who will protect and defend every objectively bad thing that developers had put into the game by saying that this is a feature, that this is something that the game has, that the game is supposed to work like this, it's your problem if you don't understand it, and so on and so forth. And moving forward a bit, in regards to Nioh 2, the amount of those kind of people are actually not that high, but the spread of negativity, or at least that their bad, their aggressiveness, their actual toxicity is so widespread among those who are playing this game, to the point where, as a newcomer, both as a newcomer and as a player who, as a more or less like experienced player of this game, it's hard to justify being with them or associating yourself with this swamp, with this freaking toxic swamp of the people in quotation mark. Yes, I cannot call them real people. More on that later. But returning back to the whole situation, the response that I received was the following. You're using slot talisman, and then you're calling bosses like easy. So play without it, and you'll see that the game is going to significantly be like way more difficult. Well, of course, my initial reaction was, why would I limit myself, or oneself? Why would anyone limit oneself from the base mechanic? And yes, the slot talisman is freaking base mechanic of the game. It's not a cheat engine, it's not an exploit, a mod, something that you could abuse over and over again, and yes, more on that also later, about the supposedly consumable items that, for them, it's like a borderline of being abusive. And their response continued. It was something like this. I'm just trying to remember, like, it's the best because most of my posts, for some reason, like, it's like, especially on the Reddit, if you not kiss the game's butt, or if you do not excuse yourself, that's another freaking thing that I hate about this community. You need to excuse yourself and say that you like the game before actually critiquing something. That's idiotic in any way, shape, or form, the way I'm thinking about it. It's like when a player or when a person enjoys something, he has the right to critique, both objectively and subjectively, something that's done wrong. And to say, he doesn't have to excuse himself for anything. But apparently not on the Reddit, but I digressed. Returning back to the whole process, the Toxic group had started to, not necessarily stalking me, but following like all of my updated like posts or videos and whatnot, and they had seen that, well, in regards to the slot situation, they had also said, well, you will see how insanely hard the game would be if you stop using like abuse items. It's the same thing in Nioh 1. My response to that was like, it's not my problem that the developers did not tune or did not fix the game in such a way that even on the lower difficulty they could have implemented something like whenever you use multiple times slot talisman, the effect of it could be diminished in terms of it reducing movement speed, attack speed, and so on and so forth. To that, like, I received like a totally, well, unbiased and fair, yeah, sure, quote-unquote response, like, oh, like, get good, noob, you can only rely on the broken stuff, you will never be able to beat this game normally, and so on and so forth, something like that. And the thing is, like, if it would have been only one person saying to me something like this, I wouldn't mind, like, yeah, sure, I had met haters or fanboys in another game, like I've said, but it was an overwhelming amount of comments from the community. Only like among, like, I received more than 20 to 30, and yes, for a small channel like myself, I consider this a lot in terms of my posts that I'm making. Yet the overwhelming amount was done in a negative fashion. So I was starting to think, well, okay, let's... oh, and coincidentally, I was also speaking to Russian player base, and there were not too many toxic members to begin with. Some of them had explained to me basically that, oh, if you're gonna rely on the slot too much, you will not be able to memorize the boss's moveset, and we already debunked this myth that you don't have to memorize the boss moveset if you don't want to play perfectly in Nioh 2, because there's like a freaking million of options to just powerhouse through them, even if you're playing without a heavy armor or without a tanky build, but whatever, right? I say, okay, fine, let me go and see, like, let me try and how should I describe it? Let me try and obey to the rules that the community had offered to me. Like, I want to see what's gonna be like so difficult about without playing slot talisman. I was still using two-handed axe, like I switched to dual swords only, starting from Dream of the Strong, yeah, I believe that, like, Way of the Strong, second difficulty. So anyway, like, lo and behold, I'm not using slot talisman from the second half of the main campaign all the way up until the end, including DLCs, the end of the main campaign and DLCs included. Have I received any severe increase in the bosses difficulty like the community was saying to me? No. I was, just like before, killing bosses from 1 to 2 attempt tops. No joke, like 1 or 2 attempts. Nothing super hard or anything like that, so it was like super easy for me to go through the campaign, to knock out either their health, the boss's health, or the key, play according to the mechanics. With the exception of the limitations that I had with axe as a weapon, everything else went smoothly. Like there was no such thing as like the major difficulty spike of you not using slot talisman. Again, keep in mind, I haven't used any ranged projectiles, I haven't used any lighting at all. Like, I was starting to using lighting, I believe, from the second difficulty, like this lighting familiar talisman that you're seeing on the screen. Well, I made another post, like I made another videos, highlighting or depicting the defeat of multiple bosses in a row, like through the campaign and DLCs, including the one that were supposedly hard, but not because of their moveset, because of the amount of cheap freaking thing they have. Yes, I'm looking at you, Minamoto no Yoshitsune and Yorimitsu. Freaking joke of a game design, but whatever. And like Tati Iboshi. So I made a post, like, and I was still questioning, like, okay, I'm not using Thought Talisman. When does the game is going to become harder? Like, what's the point? Like, again, I had no genuine interest of continuing playing through the game, or at least, how should I describe it? Like, completing the game entirely, including the end game, because of the difficulty factor. To that, I received the response of, well, you know, you're playing the tutorial difficulty, my man. Like, you have to go through the way of the Nioh to experience the freaking, get out of here, mosquito, to experience the freaking true difficulty. And you have to beat the end game, and you also had to experience the Stone of Penance thing, whatever the case, whatever the thing is called, that we discussed on the previous stream. That's a freaking waste of time to begin with, only for those who want to seek self-challenge, but nonetheless, that I didn't know about that back then. And to me, it sounded like they are making an excuse for themselves in terms of justifying as a newcomer, like making. Not necessarily making things up, but more so making excuses for a newcomer who figure out most of the stuff, how to not necessarily exploit how to be the strongest version of your character by using a lot of the strong tools and just going through the game. Like, I legit responded to that, like, oh, and I also received another response by saying, Nioh 2, it's not about... how exactly it was phrased? Like, it's not about like you be, like, there is something along the lines of the tools that the game gives you makes your character overpowered, and if you're gonna be playing like that, you're gonna be extremely bored. So Nioh 2 is not about that. It's about creating self-challenges for yourself, as if self-crippling yourself. Like, you should not use buffs, debuffs, or at least not that much. You should not use overpowered weapons, magic or ninjutsu. You should self-prohibit yourself from using certain overpowered quote-unquote items, otherwise the game would be too boring. It's only for those, like the person also asked, like, it's only for those who seek to challenge themselves over and over by creating this, he phrased it like, as if I'm trying to create for myself some kind of a weird self-challenge situation for no reason at all, just to beat the freaking original game. Can you believe, like, I received that response not where I was at the way of the Nioh or something like that. I received that at the new difficulty, like at the first difficulty, excuse me. Okay, I responded like, what's the freaking point of creating the self-challenge for yourself if it limits the potential and the strength of your character, of your build in general? Like, what's the reason? Like, give me the reasoning behind it, because as a newcomer, in the game, in every game that has an action RPG element attached to it, where your character could will get stronger naturally over time by getting the gear and so on and so forth, the majority of us on their first playthrough, keep in mind this was my first playthrough and I received those kind of responses, like either excuses or something like, oh, you were just showing off, wait till you get to Way of the Neo, or the other guy that said like, oh, okay, you need to create self-challenges. As a newcomer, every newcomer wants to feel their character being powerful on their first playthrough. The only, not necessarily option, the only time where he or she would want to include those self-limitations or self-challenges for himself or herself, if the game became like too boring already, or at least they played it for so long period of time, they knew every nook and cranny of this game, and they want to create something new just for the sake of fresh experience, not necessarily reliving the same stuff, but like through self-limitation create the self-experience. And I personally don't mind that, but that was not on the first playthrough. Again, not on the first playthrough. I strongly insist on that. Unless you're doing this for big money or for some unknown reason, I don't see the point of doing those kind of challenges. Just saying this, I have nothing against them, unless you're doing it like for a very clear goal in mind. That's not just for, oh, let's do it for shits and giggles because otherwise the game would be too easy. That's stupid, in my opinion, and we already talked about that, about like the fact that I guess we should but we should mention the fact that Nioh is not the game that rewards any player for going stylishly, like Devil May Cry, at your enemies, or like limiting yourself, like through self-limitation, it may reward you with extra loot. No, there's no such thing, so why do you suggest to me such options? And I say, like, that would be the same logic as say to a person to play the game blindfolded, to play without your arms, to press the buttons with your nose, something like that, or with your schlang, whatever the case might be. Like, yeah, that's something that I have said. It may sound it a bit rudely, but considering their initial response, and this is me paraphrasing their comments in a more nicer way to not offend or to not be so offensive myself, I was writing such comments in response to their answers, basically. And yeah, I received an answer. An answer that shows from the major parts of the game, like what's wrong with the community as a whole, and why and how it influences not just me, because later on I'm gonna be sharing and telling a lot of other newcomers' experience, but also the players from the the player base that's already exists in this game, as well as the developers. I received an answer in the way like this. The game doesn't have to appeal you, kiddo. As if I somehow touched upon his age, but nonetheless I digressed. If you don't like this game, uninstall. Like, it doesn't have to please everyone. It's only for those who can appreciate the challenge or appreciate the well-designed mechanics, even those that are working bad. Like, I already answered to you. Like, if you don't like the challenge, like, get the fuck out. Like, something like in this way. Okay, I guess, and again, like, just like before, overwhelming amount of comments there in the second post that I was making had received overwhelming amount of critique for no reason at all. Again, I wasn't trying to show off, I wasn't trying to prove, oh, look how terrible the game is. I said that I'm enjoying some of the aspects, I just wish that the difficulty curve and the difficulty implementation of this game would have been more suited or more fleshed out in comparison to everything else. But I received a very toxic response that didn't answer my question to begin with. It again, to an extent, provoked me, but I just stopped answering. I just stopped answering after this comment to anything else, anything that's right or had been reading something or had written something. Even though there was like a few selective individuals that have said, well, in regards to the slots or the lighting, those are the strongest options, and some people are just trying to avoid them. Again, I don't know for what freaking reason. This is the basic mechanic. Never mind, I'm gonna keep continuing. So this is why our community, as they have labeled themselves like this, trying to avoid such a thing in order to not provoke any like tilting discussions or something like that. Strange. Sounds strange. For a newcomer, it's like it was freaking obnoxious to hear that, but nonetheless, I continued. Continued all the way through. I'm gonna finish my experience like I'm talking to the end, and then I'm gonna give the word to my brother. He had also something to share. I continued through the end of the what you may call it of the original campaign, and I've defeated like the last boss of Takimaru, right? And you need to, like, from the perspective of somebody who had played through all Souls games, through multiple slasher games, action RPG games, including and Nioh 2, I played like specifically from the very Sekiro Shadows Die Twice 2. Nioh 2 I played from the very beginning all the way up until Way of the Neo, including this freaking end game. Just to give you the context of where I'm coming from, so that you would not think, oh, this crap only describes like the tutorial difficulty. How dare he? If you're watching, if you're one of the toxic members of this community, you may say, oh, how dare he speaks of bad of the game, especially in the tutorial difficulty. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Welcome all the toxic members to my YouTube channel and to Twitch, where you can find all the video on demand from both me and my brother, where we completed everything in relation to Nioh 2. But I digressed. Basically, when I'm fighting last boss in any game, at least something that has Souls-like element, especially slasher elements. I haven't even figured out like wearing a Takimaru's virtual. Yeah, right. Like, good luck. Anyway, like, the last game that I have played in this vein was Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and I was fighting, in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, I was fighting a boss, a true final boss, the Ishin Ashina, like the Sword Saint, where the younger version of him, not the older one, the younger version of him. That boss tests your all ability, like everything that you had been practicing, everything that you was experiencing throughout the whole game. You need to be on top of your form to beat him. Like, no joke. There is no strategy to abuse him because of the limitation that Sekiro has. There is no magic trick that would allow you to go through him, like, by continuously repeating the same stuff over and over again. No, you had to give your all to overcome him. What I have experienced when I had reached boss like Takimaru, the final boss of the original campaign, killed him, and yes, despite all that, I killed Ishin on the first try, but that's not the point. The point is the mechanics of the fight against Takimaru are way worse compared to against Ishin the Sword Saint. So I killed Takimaru on my first try, easily. Like, just, I think I had left like 5 or 6 healing potions out of 8 or 9, probably 8. Okay, maybe like 5 healing potions left, some resources too. Again, without slot talisman, I just had to use like demon form once. And yeah, maybe you are gonna say also, oh, wait, Yokai Shift is too overpowered, like you don't need to use it, like you should just go skillfully kill him without Yokai Shift form. I will not going to answer to that question, to that assumption. Especially if you're the one who thinks that using, again, like the base system is somehow making your character overpowered. But my question when I killed it, I made a post and I said, like, what's the point with the final boss of the OG campaign? Like, yeah, I am aware that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice did not receive or did not have any DLCs, but come on, like the final boss you name, except for maybe like a Gwyn in Dark Souls 1 who can be cheesed with parry. You name the recent bosses from Bloodborne, what you call him, the German the First Hunter, or you name the boss from Sekiro, like Ishin the Sword Saint. And other guys like, what's the deal? Like, why was he so easy? Like, I don't understand. Like, where? And I made a long post describing that he doesn't test your ability as a player. You can power through him, through his attacks, just like with all the other previous bosses. Like, there's no not necessarily room for improvement, but there's no need to be on peak of your form to beat most of the bosses in Nioh 2. Like, yeah, that's you can power through him. Again, everything that I was experiencing is just me using buffs and debuffs and simply like smashing through everything. Even though, like that's the big, even though I have not used lighting and I had not used overpowered weapon. Two-handed axe is not like, that's the weapon that most of the people consider like average or slightly below average. So I was asking, like, what the hell? He doesn't have new face at all. He doesn't have any like dangerous attacks to begin with, unless you take into account like this elemental stuff, which is a complete joke. If you drink sake, the only thing you need to worry about is the raw damage from it, not necessarily those debuffs. And it was mostly a struggle for me to get to him, because in the last phase he likes to run around for some reason from you to cast his stuff rather than to kill him. So that's that. And I was saying, like, did they drop the ball like from the last boss? Because yeah, in Nioh 1 the last boss wasn't too spectacular because it was a giant boss, and as you know, Team Ninja sucks at doing giant bosses. Like and yes, I'm looking at you, Nightmare Bringer, and Castle boss and the Castle Rock boss, whatever, I forgot their exact names, so excuse me if I don't remember them by heart. That was like the bigger version of the humanoid, like it's supposed to be memorable, like something like that, and he didn't even have, like, even the boss that you're seeing on the screen, Kashin Koji, had, I memorized, not necessarily memorized, but I remembered him, because it was a boss that legit, like, you kill him once, he goes up, and you had to fight him twice. It doesn't happen here, but at least in the campaign is something that that happened. Nothing like this whatsoever with Atakimaru. And I was like, rewatching my video on demand, rewatching my videos, think, like, what's the deal? Why is he so weak for last boss of the original campaign? Of course, again, overwhelming amount of response, like, I don't know what triggers the community when I'm saying that it's a simple sentence, like, I'm saying, why is he so weak? I'm not saying, oh, look at me, like, I'm demolishing Atakimaru, he's so weak and puny, he can't do anything to me. It's either modern people, modern society interprets everything that they want, and this is something that I had strong intentions to believe in. Rather than they don't understand the meaning of the sentence, I don't understand why is he so weak. It's not something that would, in my opinion, it's not something that should trigger you. In my opinion, this is not a provocative stuff. But you may think whatever you may think at this point. Nonetheless, what did I receive? I received an overwhelming amount of answers of saying, oh, just you wait until you fight him in the DLC. Oh, just you wait until you fight. This is not his true form. He's not the true final boss. To that I respond, wait, what? Like, he's the final boss, I said, of the original campaign. I didn't say he was the final boss of the entire game, because I was aware at that point that there's like 3 DLCs after the OG campaign. Like, what's the matter of that sentence? Just you wait until you fight him on the way of the Nioh underworld depths, you put whatever fits here, and just, this is it. To which I responded, is he gonna have, like, some new phases or mechanic, like, that could devastate you? Probably, like, this, even though the response was too aggravating and provocative from them, at least it's something that was something that I was interested in when I was playing through the game for the first time. Like, I had genuine motivation to look at those cool, quote-unquote, new moves at the highest difficulties. And I got a response by saying, yes, he's gonna have 2 new attacks, one in the shadow phase, one in the regular phase. And those attacks are hard to avoid and they're very deadly. Moving onwards, I'm gonna say that those attacks, unless you take into account his string of attacks in shadow form, the new attack that he gains in the regular form and when he's not in the yokai realm, it's a joke. Like it's a one-hit spell that you can easily avoid. It has something to do with the fireball cast, but it's a bit different compared to something that you had seen originally on the first difficulty. Which means that again, like those could be trivialized by the usage of the elixirs. But there I also made like an analogy of like the bosses from like why the developers refuse to add for the endgame bosses such stuff like new phases with multiple attacks instead of like 2 attacks from the 5 difficulties straight. Why he doesn't test your skills, why there is no like satisfaction because you literally can just pummel through him of beating him. At least for, again, I'm experiencing this as a newcomer, not a veteran, not an expert, as a freaking newcomer, not to the series as a whole, but to Nioh 2 game. To which, again, the overwhelming amount of aggressive response was, doesn't have to please everyone, most of the people had got what they wanted, it's your problem, it's your fault, don't like it, don't play it, something like that, like, this boss is well designed for the final boss. To which I said, how so if you can pummel directly through them? Well, most of the players are struggling with him. What do you mean most? It's like saying, oh, this boss is well designed, most of the players, even though there is no like actual facts to complement this. Like for me, you can see, when I was always making those posts, there was a facts. But from them, it was always their word with no factual evidence. Doesn't have to be always factual evidence, but at least like give me some kind of, if not direct statistic, but at least give me some videos where people are trying their boss for the first time, dying through him over and over again. At the videos that I had found myself, when I had watched people first playing through the game, and those people that realized how the mechanics worked, it was their first kill, either 2 tries maximum, or like one try to kill him for the final boss. And again, casters did the ones that played with casters archetype actually did even better compared to melee archetypes, but I digressed. Yeah, this is how supposedly people are struggling on this final boss. So again, like this is something that I don't understand. Like their words did not motivate me that well on the first difficulty to play. There was even more, like just to top it all off, and then I will let the word to my brother. I will let my brother speak. Give the word to my brother. There is one boss called Benki or Benkai, whatever it's called. Like it's living armor, like the monk or whatever. Like. I called him a golem or like a dreadnought just to associate him with the Warhammer. So this boss, if you have the 2-handed axe, it's a joke. Like I killed him both in the campaign as well as in the secondary mission that you supposed to fight him like 1v1 in the cool looking field, just by using heavy attack in high stance. That's it. Oh, and the same thing against certain other individual, I believe like the Kichiro, it was like the regular one in the OG campaign. So I kill him with this attack alone. I didn't have to use any fancy shenanigans with Axe by switching stances, by extending combos, doing all that nonsense that strange people are talking about. And again, I made the post by saying like, look at how easily like this guy does, and yes, it's objectively this boss, both the Kishra and Benkei, was dying in seconds, in freaking seconds. They didn't have any chance for a counterattack. They were dying in seconds. Again, do I think it's a good design in terms of the difficulty of the bosses? Of course not. If we're talking about taking the turns, nobody actually said to the developers, oh look, you as a player could non-stop fighting the boss, and yes, this is something that I'm going to discuss a little bit later in terms of the toxic response that I got about hyper armor, but nonetheless. If you want to take the turns, I'm completely fine with this as long as the game resets logically to neutral distance, both between my character and my opponent, without any like instant hits or instant strings of attacks that I cannot avoid or block just because I have low stamina. I invested it all in my attacks. But objectively, those bosses were a joke. Like, literally, you could rewatch some of the old footages if you wanted to. I believe some of them were, all of them are present on my YouTube channel. You can see when I'm talking about those bosses, it's a matter of less than 30 seconds to kill them. For Benkei it was even less. And I got the response, oh, you're using, against the Kichiro, since he was a human, you're using a weapon that is strong against humans. If you had used other weapons, like the ones that are weak against humans, you would have a way harder time. Huh? Like, again, and against Benkei it was, oh, you're using... Stop spamming your strong attack. Learn how to combo. Learn how to do... Even though previously I legit, in every previous episode, I already knew how to do combo, flux, stand switching, and all the other nonsense. Stop spamming high attack. You kill him just because you spammed your strong attack and high stance way too much. It would have been a way different fight if you had done differently. And again, those comments were an overwhelming amount. It's not like, again, it's not the one person saying to me something like this. It was an overwhelming response, to which I said, how many times do I had to, like I responded, restrain myself? Like, just because you said that this is something that supposedly makes the game more fun? How so? Killing things slowly makes the game more fun? Restricting yourself like makes something more enjoyable in terms of the victory that it provides? Again, I'm strongly inclined that it's not a problem of any newcomer that comes into any game, and if he says the strongest option, no brain, it's no wonder he is gonna use it. It's like the same thing with the tier list in fighting games, the strongest characters or archetypes in RPGs, MMORPGs, and so on and so forth. Majority of the people will play them no matter what. So to say, oh, it's gonna be boring, who cares about it being boring or not? Like, this is on your first playthrough. I don't know about you guys, but for them, again, like I said before, for the major part of the players, their first playthrough needs to be a springboard or a trampoline for other characters, especially if you're talking about like equipping other characters. You want to have a strong basis, just like with everything in life, on which you're gonna build your other stuff. You don't want to have like those gimmicks or freaking wobbly just for fun builds just because like, oh, it looks fun but the effectiveness of it is garbage. That's number one. And number two, again, this was a basic system. The heavy attack in high stance, it's a basic system, it's not an exploit. So why do you... like, it's a joke at this point, it's laughable. So, yeah, like this, and all of this is just at the beginning. Like, yeah, it's like in Resident Evil, the beginning of the worst nightmare that I had to overcome. The more I played through this game, the more posts... I made posts in general more rarer because I was tired of receiving every time the responses that says to something like you should, not necessarily like you should or should not, because you could argue that, oh, just don't listen to the problem with that is there is no meaningful conversations for you to be had unless you kiss the game, again, like I'm telling you, unless you kiss the game's butt, or you excuse yourself for not liking something, and then you add to this, well, I like the game as a whole, but it's just that one aspect that I kind of have a problem to understand. I hate this kind of behavior. Why does anyone have to excuse themselves if you're not breaking the rules of the house or for any rules at all? Like, I wasn't trying to provoke any kind of controversial discussions or something like that. I wasn't trying to be mean or rude again, and this is something that will immediately, this is the stuff that will be on the face of every community. This is something that you will encounter first, especially if you play the game for the first time. say something strange or bad about like the camera angle. Well, the camera angle, it's like in those type of games, it's a meme at this point. It will never gonna be fixed. And in Elden Ring, I'm 99.9% sure there will be instances where you'll die because of the camera angle. But say something bad against mechanics, about some mechanics that had been badly implemented, and so on and so forth, or just share the experience that allowed you to achieve your victory in an easier fashion. I guarantee you, the majority people will hate you. And this is gonna be this will not motivate you to continue forward. At least if you are not like us, if you don't want to go through the very end, if you don't want to experience everything, this will not motivate you to go forward. This will not motivate you to keep talking with those people, to ask for an advice or recommend, because how are you supposed to ask of an advice from anyone, if, or from the major group of people at least, if the answers that you get are, haha, that's your problem, or it's not a bug, it's a feature, oh, you had to, another side of the argument, like you had to reach that difficulty, only then it gets remotely challenging, but before that everything is a tutorial. It's the same freaking argument that said that one of the videos I had recently watched, you had to put 100 hours into this game before the game becomes any good. It's freaking nonsense. If your game has elements on the point of being exploitable or very strong to begin with, on the basic level, again, on the basic level, I'm gonna use it. Most of the people will use it, no matter what. But to address or to start any kind of conversation, any kind of meaningful discussion with major part of the Nioh 2 community, it's impossible. Because from those responses that I received, everything that was mostly either a trollish comment, which I don't mind, a direct aggression, a direct irritation about me, myself, like how dare I'm playing like such effective, quote-unquote, how dare I use the basic elements, like you should be restrictive, you should obey to the rules. Who invented those rules, whatever the case might be. Otherwise, you should kiss the game's butt, even if the mechanic is freaking garbage. Otherwise, every post, every video that we'll share, every video that you'll share, every post that you'll make is gonna be met with those kind of behavior. So yeah, I'll pause up here and I'll let my brother talk to what he is thinking about this kind of situation, as well as let him share his experience. Go ahead.
Quite a lot of things have been said already by you. Quite with pretty much everything I do agree. I personally want to ask literally those who kiss this game's butt, who are saying all that nonsense, how many times do you guys going to do this sort of thing? How many times will you going to say, this game is so fucking perfect, it has no flaws, has no bugs, has no problems, has no anything, it's super fun, and every time you find another way, basic way to beat the challenge, you're going to say, it's boring. Go on Reddit and look, like, every time you play normally this game, by normally, I mean normally, not in the retarded way, like, seriously, the way that they want you to play this game is so, like, imagine this situation, and I'm going to say, like, this is their usual, like, routine. So when they go to take a piss, they go in the toilet, they stand on their head, instead of like standing still on your foot or sitting on the toilet, they will going to stand on their head and they will going to piss standing on their head. This is like their routine. They don't do things normally. They're fucking morons and retards who, like, their amount is so small, but the amount of how fucking retarded they are, and the fact that they will going to stalk you, they will going to say shit even though you didn't ask them. It's not about like, oh, it's a public. It's a public, but you are a retard here. You come into here to a person explaining like or asking something, and you insert your retardation there, and you think that he should believe in what you're saying. Like, oh, I beat the boss. Oh, fuck you, you beat the boss. He's not the boss. He's not the final boss. He's not the difficulty boss. You go to this difficulty, you don't do this, you don't use that, you don't... Like, fuck, stop. This is so fucking, like, sadistic and bullshit way of, like, you don't attract people. And here is my problem, like, I am strongly against kissing any game's butt, even those games that I adore, such as like being Persona 5. I absolutely fucking like I like it, but I can easily say that certain elements need to be improved. Certain elements don't work like perfectly. There is like this thing doesn't work, that thing doesn't work, oh, here it could be better, there it could be better, oh, yes, I agree that this element doesn't work. Say something bad, or something that you think that doesn't work here good to those retards, and they will going to tell you, this doesn't, it's only you who think this way, uninstall, you kid, it's you, not the game, it's not the game's fault, it's your fault. Like, constructive criticism, ladies and gentlemen, do you even fucking know what constructive criticism mean? Like, I say good things and I say bad things. If you kiss the game's butt and you are doing it in such a fashion where you literally, like, you toxic spit in my face. You spit that your fatness, like you, that jelly that comes from your fucking mouth. It's like transitioning through the internet, like in my face, and I can feel this toxic shit like on my face. And you are saying that your opinion is right? Who the fuck said that your opinion is right? When clearly a person can show you that the game has game bugs. No, it's not a game bug, it's a feature. My fucking ass. I have a moment where I fought against a boss and he was literally half of his body, half of the fight, he was gliding in the textures. He was like 2 centimeters above the ground, and he was like gliding on the ground, and it's like, yes, it's a feature. It's a feature. It's a feature, ladies and gentlemen. Feature. Bugs are so, like, it is not a bug. It is not a bug when I press option button in the menu where I need to look at, like, to view more options in the blacksmith or something like this, my screen goes gray and I receive like no information. That's also not a bug, that's a feature. Features, features, features. Only in your fucking world of idiots that are polluting this world. I will going to say it like this, I will not going to restrain myself when it comes to like bad-mouthing them, because it doesn't matter whether you're going to say it like in good words or in bad words. Those shitheads will never going to, like, they will never going to agree with you. They will going to always stand there until they will get the last arguments. Like, that's always going to be like that. That will never going to change. They will always going to deny the fact that, oh, no, it's not like this, it's not like that, if you don't like it, then don't play it. What do you mean? Like, what is this argument, if you don't like it, you don't play it? Like, am I not allowed to say, like, my arguments for good things that I consider good and bad things that I consider bad? Who say that I cannot say it? What's the rule of Reddit if I go into Reddit subreddit of, say, for example, Nioh 2, I cannot express the things that I don't like. Why? Because you fucking kiss the game's butt? Because you sit there all day long stroking each other's boners and like, oh yes, today this is a great day to play this shitty game again. Oh, it's not shitty, but it's so great. Like I seriously, I don't know, like, what is this? Like, you guys are so... Just think what... Like, you want... Funny part, ladies and gentlemen, is that they want this game to be popular. Currently they have 40 people watching on prime time Nioh 2 on prime time compared to Dark Souls 1, which has like 1000 viewers. They have 40 people watching. They want this game to be popular. Well, some of them do. Some others consider it's okay that this game is not popular because this game is a fucking masterpiece. Masterpiece for who? For masturbators? Like for those shit eaters like that are like thinking that the only way to play this game is to play their way? That their way is the proper way because it's not boring? How can this game be fucking boring for you if you say that this game is perfect in all ways, shape, and forms? Like, how do you even say that this game is boring? How can you even open your mouth and say that this game is boring if all you do, day after day, you say that this game is so fucking good? Like, how? Tell me, like, you bipolar or something, or tripolar, or I don't know, like...
You know how? That's because they are playing with all the restrictions that they've had to themselves.
And again, playing with restrictions. It's not my fucking fault that you are a fucking retard that don't consider this game to be interesting to play normally. It's not anyone's fault that you fell on your head when you were born. Like, seriously. It's not no one's fault. It's your fault. Don't put your ideas on other people in a fashion that you and those other people are doing. Don't. Because here's the thing. Those, like, your community is going to be small. New players will not going to join this community. Most of them will not going to join this community because your toxicity and the way you you put your aggression onto other people, it's what makes them just go away. The game is already not that perfect, and when they go to ask something, when they go to share something, they don't need a swarm of hyenas, well, swarm, like 5 to 10 hyenas, that's like a pack of hyenas sitting on the Reddit or somewhere on Facebook that we're going to be lashing them. Filthy mage, using the lightning and slot talisman. Attack him, attack him. He's playing using build? Tell him he doesn't need to use build. Don't use build. Go watch my combo videos and only play with combos. No magic, no ninjutsu. It's not fair. Use the weak weapon. Kill bosses longer. The longer you kill them, the better it looks. Wow! Have you ever like considered like the slower it take you to kill enemies and bosses, the more fun it is. In the game when you are not being rewarded for doing combos. Wow! Saying that, like, I am making a build that is focused
combos, at least.
around one weapon. And you know what? I have easy time against this boss and I'm going to be told it's because you were using this weapon. My fucking character build revolves around using this weapon. I don't give a fucking shit about you saying, you should have your other weapon. For every boss, there is a weak spot. But I'm not like using weakness against like every boss. Like, for example, I'm going with Kusarigama through the entire game and I will going to have easy time against certain bosses. You're going to come to me and say like, oh, go switch to another weapon. Oh, go fuck yourself. Seriously, go fucking fuck yourself. Like, I had a moron coming into my stream who was like, immediately saying like, seeing me taking my time to kill one boss. I wasn't killing him that fast. He was like saying, wow, what a scrub, using the most overpowered weapon, and it takes you so long to kill the enemy. And I'm like, dude, you're fucking kidding me. Kusarigama is the most overpowered weapon in Nioh 2. Like, immediately, just that phrase, the most overpowered weapon. Oh, yes, the most overpowered weapon. In what aspect? In what kind of tier list? What is he even saying? You should apologize to your viewers for playing badly. A little bit of a spoiler. This guy came on the second stream, like day after tomorrow, and I fucking banned him instantly. I didn't ban him the first time, thinking that he's going to know his place. No, he came again, I just banned him. I never said, wrote, or spoke that I am professional at this game, that I know everything about this game, that I am making the most overpowered build, that I am using the build that is about like slowly killing bosses. No. And neither will I going to apologize to anyone for playing the way I want. You come here, you talk shit, you tell me how to play, you implore your playstyle on me, expect in the most toxic manner. You want me to use this playstyle? No, go fuck yourself. You, the community that you belong to, you can go fuck yourself, and because of you, this game is going to become even more shittier as more sequels will going to go by, because you are fucking idiots. You don't give developers a feedback. What kind of fucking feedback did you give developers? Like, oh, the randomness system in this game when it comes to loot and progression is so fucking good. Give me more. Give me fucking more. I can't wait to look at another game and see that this shit is even like going over the top even more. Story. We made a video of the podcast about story. We explain our opinion. Majority of those people are saying the story is great. If you consider the story the weak element, it's your problem.
Can you imagine what kind of trash they are watching if they're considering the story is great?
it's like anime. You just turn your brain off. I already know that you guys have turned your brain off when you were born. I already know that. I already fucking know that. That for those of you for whom this game is like the best the gaming industry has produced in like 10 to 15 years, you can go in whatever like and play whatever fucking shit you are playing and stroke these games. Well, they're like, you can do this all day long. I already know that I will not going to get a good response from you. You guys are so like retards. A simple word are retards and delusional. You live in this world where you want this game to be so popular to others, but when it comes to like telling others why this game is popular and why it should be popular and why others should think this way, you can't do that. You simply cannot do that, because I can like easily go on Reddit or some other pages like Facebook groups. I can find those shitty posts where you again like stroke those elements of the game that are so controversial or are working so poorly or are like blandly bad taste, and I will going to see you again there showing that no, it's not bad, you just don't understand, or turn your brain off, or don't do this, or don't do that, or uninstall. No, you uninstall. I came into your game as a newcomer, as a person who is not being plagued by the system of yours. You don't like it, you don't like me expressing my opinion. Well, too bad for you, boy. Too bad for you, boy, because I don't give shit about your opinion as well, because what you give is not an opinion. Your opinion is like, it's a selfish toxicity like pile of words in which I have to find the meaning. I don't have to find the meaning. You cannot give me constructive, like, I will come to ask you good and bad things, and if you're going to tell me only good things, you can get the fuck off. Like, that's going to be is my advice to those of you who are going to be like going into the argument. Oh, this game is perfect. Yes, like this game is perfect. Well, tell me good and bad things about this game. Come on, tell me. You're not going to tell me bad things, only good things? That's how I'm gonna go. Then your opinion is invalid. Because nothing in this world is perfect. Nothing. If you think that everything is perfect, it's your take. It's your take. And I don't have to take it. And none of the newcomers who come into this game and they want to experience this game the way they want to experience it, normal way, by using various elements that the game gives you. If there is a way to make the fight easier, then make it easier. If there is a build that they want to go to, they will then go to. And if you're going to appear there, like, those people are called like white knights, but I will going to call them the shit knights. In your shitty armor, because you like to wear underrated gear, because you like so that the fight takes longer and that you will going to die from any hit, like from anything that kills you in one hit. You appear in your shitty armor with your shitty weapon, with your shitty playstyle that takes him ages to kill the boss, and you will be again shouting, "You don't play the way you're supposed to. You don't do this, you don't do that." Well, too bad for you. You are in the minority, and you will never going to be in the majority. You and that other small group of people will always going to be lonely. You're going to be lonely, and your numbers will going to decrease slowly but surely, because like even you not going to be satisfied at like, time goes by, and you're not going to be satisfied with the game anymore. You already tried to fight bosses with every possible way that you can have, like, and you'll be waiting for another game. But that other game, like even amongst those people in the Nioh community, the other game that they prepare for you, oh, it's not as good as this one. Wow! Wonder why? Wonder who didn't give them a feedback? Wonder who didn't say that something was going bad in this game or in the previous game? Wow! But everything was good. Like, you shouldn't have any reasons to blame their next game or a possible sequel to Nioh 2. Like, you don't have right now. It's already too late. It's already too late. Your train is... And you are going to be sitting there and like... maybe not everything was good. Well, some of them will. Most of them will not. But the good thing is, at least, like, there is not that many of them.
True, I agree. I agree with that. With what you have just said. The thing is that we are not trash talking everything about this game like we did before. There are legit good elements. In regards to this game subgenre, again, something that utilizes a Souls-like element, we already named it, the progression, the combat, etc. But the amount of good things in this game, or things that has been done better in such way, especially if most people are gonna compare it to Dark Souls, are so few and far in between, even if you take into account sequel, in comparison to the amount of either controversial or outright bad stuff, like legit bad stuff that we had named previously. And again, this toxicity is not only influencing the newcomers or the beginners of this game.
I feel really sorry for beginners, like, because it's hard to, like, considering how deep you have to go into details to understand how the game functions and how certain elements of the game functions. And you also have to have some kind of build, and you also have to do this and that, and builds most of the time will not going to show you like where to get this or that, and where to get like most of the stuff is going to be unknown to you. And you will going to have questions, and you will going to want to ask them. But what you will going to get most of the time is going to be so, like, it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. And I'm very, like, sorry, because, like, as like someone coming into this game, especially blinded, like, people are not going to know like what stat is more best with what, like, things are that on the base level, or what is the best like magic or to use, or what is the combination of like this and that, and why, like, what should I use this and that, like, do I need to use combos or not, like long combos, short combos. They will be misleaded. They will be misleaded so heavily, especially if they will going to take the bait and will going to go like and do the stuff that are being proposed by that minority, and by the toxic minority that is going to derive them from possibly good path that they might have found into the path that is going to bring them only pain.
The thing is, you're saying minority, but it's actually majority. For it's majority of the I was about to continue like my thought. If you want to start any meaningful, constructive conversation about some of the basic or advanced mechanics of this game, in the sense that you want to discuss their application, their implementation, how good they are functioning in this game, how they had been improving from the first game, there is only a few selected people that you could talk to, and typically they post the stuff on the platforms like Reddit that is outright positive. That doesn't contain anything like controversial. If you wanna still have those kind of discussion, you're better off finding people either on Discord group for Nioh 2 or in some Facebook groups, because there, at least, if you would have met some toxic individual, the moderators typically are quickly getting rid of it. But while I was about to continue my thought, it doesn't only affect newcomers, it affects also the player who would want to transition, like myself, from a newcomer to a more experienced player. I have a couple more examples, both for newcomers, how badly their influence is, and when I'm saying influence, see, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are directly, how should I say, directly telling you like what to do, like indirectly, yes, but it's still the more you keep encountering those kind of comments or keep trying to talk with such people, the more you start to obey unintentionally to the rules. But returning back to the whole, like, the topic that I would want to have, I say would want to have because the discussion got derailed pretty quickly again on the toxicity side. I'm talking about hyper armor. So when I was playing through the first difficulty, like the Way of the Samurai, again I made a post of saying that I don't like how hyper armor is implementing in this game. Of course, worse, like I don't like or I hate or whatever the case might be, it's subjective. So I made a good point by showing like that in the video, as well, in the video of mine, as well as like having the shorter videos, the longer ones, where I had expressed that the hit advantage is non-existent. The fact that enemies can sometimes ignore even the ones that had red stamina, which apparently should signal that it's like you can stagger them with even the lightest of attacks. They could still attack you through it. But in regards to your character, those rules are not applied whenever you are out of stamina or whenever you are getting hit, or sometimes me, like as a heavy armor, I know my brother played light armor user, so he had a slightly different experience on that, but even me as the heavy armor user, when somebody talk, oh, you have 100% guaranteed heavy armor activation upon heavy attack and high stance. No, not 100%. I had a clear evidence of both enemies and bosses interrupting me. In between, you know, the heavy attack and the high stance with X, like that with two-handed X, it's 2 hits. In between those attacks, before the initial attack had started, well, before, that's okay, or during the attack that had been started. So again, this was like my evidence of it not being functioning properly, of the hyper armor not functioning properly in this game. Do you know what? Again, and I was also saying that it's hard to understand. Well, understand, maybe not the correct word, to react when enemies are going to do something, because of the speed of the game is progressively getting more quicker the higher throughout the when you go through on the higher difficulties. And there is no like clear-cut indication of enemies had hyper armor. And I brought also a good example of not necessarily something that was implemented in Nioh 2, but in the other games like fighting game genre. Because when in fighting game genre, when you hit an enemy, he usually glows when he has a hyper armor, and it creates like the sound of you hitting on the metal side of things. So you hit them, it hits in the metal side of things. But in Nioh 2, there is no, as if you are hitting a metal object. In Nioh 2, there is no such thing. In Nioh 2, each time you hit an enemy, yes, because the person who had made a counter argument to this, he said like, oh well, if you are fighting yokai, his bar is not red, he's gonna have hyper armor all the time. Again, it's not true, because some of the yokais are easily staggerable even if they don't have this key depleted to the red bar. It's like, oh, the game, again, like, the game will otherwise be too easy, you're asking for, like, for the, it's already been done in a good way. Point. I don't know what the hell was the meaning for that sentence. By you saying it's already been done in a good way, doesn't prove or disprove anything. It just shows that you don't know what you're talking about. He goes to say like, oh, there is a clear like, and I don't understand. The clear indicator, again, I asked them the following question. The clear indicator is by enemies attacking you in a split second, by either a very fast attack or by string of attacks. This means, exactly, like, this is your definition of clear indicator, especially freaking bosses. The same thing could be addressed with the what you call them, with the humanoid bosses. Like I said, their key is red, but some of them can immediately, like in an instance, activate something devastating and outright kill your character right then and there, or at least activate the scroll. And how good your reaction is supposed to be. I played fighting games, and I still playing it occasionally. I wasn't able to react to this. React on the spot. That's how fast it is. It's insanely fast, even for a light armor user. And yes, I know some people may say, oh wait, you don't know what you're talking about. Most experienced streamers, again, if you're a toxic individual watching, hello and welcome, but whatever, you know what you're talking about. Most experienced players will react to it easily. No, they aren't. No, they aren't. Because guess what? Most experienced players, even if you watch a restream of their Underworld playthrough or something like that, when they have light armor user, guess what happens? When enemies or bosses attack in a split second, they die. They die right then and there. There is no human reaction. You're supposed to be like a machine that predicts, and yes, predicting and reacting is not the same thing, that supposed to react for a split-second light attack, and attacks could be many, and they could cover a wide range.
And there is also another point to that particular statement when it comes to reaction. Certain enemies in this game, enemies and bosses, have those attacks that are considered like a battle will going to go in a sort of trying to reposition into a neutral state. When the enemy or boss attacks you with very fast attack that supposedly it should not do much damage to you, but it's supposed to stop your offense. However, to those who are playing light armor, and especially to those who are not using debuffs and buffs for whatever the fuck reason, those attacks will kill you. Again, this isn't just something that comes from nowhere. We also watch streams. We also saw that a person was playing with light armor and fists, and he was one-shotted by this neutral restand attack.
Yeah, neutral when you're staying on the spot.
From... how was it? From
Nobunaga. From Nobunaga, yeah.
And it killed him from full HP in one hit. A simple attack that that's purpose is not to kill you, not to do a lot of damage to you, but to stop your offense and reset the fight on neutral range. Except it doesn't really reset anything, it just kills you. So, whenever you also say, like, it functions the way it should. So, you wanna tell me, especially if you are the one who are trying to do, like, those combos. So, in the middle of combos, when it's your turn. Like, it's your turn, you're attacking the target. Doing those combos. You are hitting, like, devastating the enemy's face, and in the middle of all that, he just does attack. He just does attack. Most stuff, and say for example, you go even further beyond as to not use burst counters or other stuff, because yes, some people do consider this to be a improper way of playing the game as well, because like you don't have to use this. You are prohibited. By whom? I do not know. Why? I do not know. But basically, if you even restrict yourself even further beyond, how will you do a combo? How will you stop yourself? If, like, you were thinking it's my turn, the enemy does an attack against you or a counter combo against you while being hit by your combo. This is his hyper armor. This is the something that works the way it should. In a retarded world, yes, it is working properly. In the normal world, it would be like this. You get a sound, you get a bright color indication.
Visual indication.
Visual. And sound. So that you know it's time to run, or it's time to block, or it's time to reposition, or it's time to just stop. Not just, oh, I have to guess, oh, he does this, oh, I was not ready for this, maybe my human reactions were not long enough. No, it's not about reactions. It's not about reactions when you simply will going to just think that it is my turn, so I have to play like I think that it is my turn. But then I die, but then what? Then what? Like, it's not working properly. And those who say that it is working properly, this is not correct. This is not correct. Every game that has hyper armor, especially they like to compare it to fighting games, there is a turn system, that's A, and you know when your opponent is going to go against you, unless it's an EX move or MK10, like block, like not block stuff, basically some sort of a combo breaker or something like this. Like, you know what to expect. Here, you just rely on what ifs.
Yeah, true. It's and the argument that the argument that those players, the toxic members provided against me is the fact that, well, like again, like if you don't like it, don't play it. But that's already beating around the beating around the same bush. That's number one. And number two, we're doing like we're playing just fine. Most of the players are playing just fine. But I've asked, like, can you show me the evidence, like of multiple evidences of hyper armor working as intended, and you are getting around it by one way, shape, or form? Of course not. It's only their word against mine. But the thing is, I have the evidence on the videos that I'm saving, the videos that I'm posting, as well as the as well as the feedback. Again, the post that I had made originally about hyper armor, it wasn't a provocative one. Like, I don't understand the aggressiveness and outright toxicity when I'm literally just questioning why does I'm not saying it works. I'm not saying it's like a trash mechanic that should be deleted from entirely and from the entirety of the game and should never be used, or ha ha ha, look at this game, this game like implemented it better. I was saying that sometimes, like, my post was formulated in a such fashion that, like, sometimes hyper armor doesn't really work as the way it's supposed to, and proposed as well as proposed some stuff how you could improve it. Plus, I give the clear evidence for that. And instead I received the feedback in format of like something like, oh, it's your problem, for me it works fine, find a solution like in yourself, something like some like generic nonsense that doesn't have, again, how can one have a constructive discussion if you are not the with any member of that community, when you are doing the only thing that you think, the only thing that you know is like how to formulate logically those answers, how to like provide the evidence so that people know about what you're talking about, and instead you're getting shit talk. Like this is not, again, this is not me trying to sugarcoat something. This is something happened that it happened in reality, like during my first playthrough. And again, you like this is your first-hand experience. This is something that would either sell you or convince you to move onwards, or it will convince you to stop right then and there. If we're talking about any conversation with members of the Nioh 2 community, at least meaningful one, I realized that I had to stop right then and there, because for the most part it was full of generic morons who was jerking off themselves, jerking off the game, naming everything like superbly done, without acknowledging any kind of criticism, without giving any kind of meaningful evidence, without providing any kind of meaningful feedback to your posts. Meaningful conversation could not be held there and there. So I realized it's pointless to do anything about it. But it doesn't stop there. Here's the thing, I said like that was me trying to go from the newcomer or from the beginner player to a more experienced one. You might think, oh, it's only like it only influences you, like maybe you're telling the story because like you're biased, even though my brother already shared his take on it. Maybe it's like only influences you, and in the grand scheme of things it's not that big of a deal as you're describing. My friends, this is where you were wrong. You see, I was keeping track. I'm gonna give some more examples of this, but I was keeping track of the activity of this community, as well as when the newcomers are coming, like to play this game. What the response was, or what they're like, whether they accept anyone in their ranks or not. Like recently, practically 2 days ago, I read the post when person was coming from Nioh 1 to Nioh 2, and he asked, what is, or how powerful is ninjutsu and magic in Nioh 2 is compared to Nioh 1? You know what response was? An overwhelming amount. Like, you should not use as much ninjutsu or magic, because otherwise the game would be too boring. You should appreciate melee combat system, because it was more fleshed out than in the first game, and it has you can rely on it alone to go through the entirety of the content, which is true, but there's a big but. Big but, yeah, like sounds crazy. Big but to it. That's the newcomer, not to the series, but to the game itself.
And again, it's also funny. Like, you have to rely on just a pure combat system without using those.
But yeah,
but it's in the game where the pure melee builds got nerfed to the fucking ground.
Yeah, but the counter argument.
It's so fucking funny that they, again, this is their implementation. Oh, you don't have to use the... Why should I not use this? Like, if it's going to make my experience of the game better overall, if I will not going to be super stressed out, or what, like, do I have to like go bold just because I will going to be playing this game like with underrated weapon, with like no magic, no ninjutsu, no anything? Like, maybe you want to give me a suggestion not to level up my stats. Maybe you want to give me a suggestion not to like wear armor whatsoever. Maybe not use graces. Like, that this is going to take the fights like long. The fights are going to be longer. And it's not like I'm not going to be using like the same pattern for like half hour straight, like using the same combos over and over and over and over again until I die occasionally, because like eventually I will going to miss a hit. Like, I don't understand this. Do you understand the fact that this game is being played not only by the people who are aiming to play this game for the sake of self-challenge by using various means, by self-creating the challenge? Like, do you understand that not every person wants to relive your experience? Like, I'm going to take it a bit like not into the harsh way of saying things, but do you have any sort of respect for other people's opinion? Like,
No, they don't.
Seriously, like, people come in to hear with their opinion. Who said that your opinion is the only thing that matters in this world? Like, why do you think that you and those other people who like to play in this particular fashion, that are challenging between one another by who kills this boss by hard limiting himself more? Other people don't want this. Just understand this. Stop saying to them that this game is boring, because the amount of time you say that this game is boring convinces me that this game is not perfect for you. Those who say that this game is all in all perfect. How is it perfect if it's turn you like most of the new stuff, most of the improved stuff, and most of the stuff that's like is there on the basic level makes you feel bored and makes you think that the game is way too easy? Then say to the developer, like, give your feedback, give your constructive feedback. Say to the developer that instead of Stone of Penance, which is a, like, I'm not kidding, Stone of Penance, the only thing it does, it increases damage and HP of bosses and enemies, and damage to the absurd amount. It's like this is coming from Reddit, straight from Reddit. It feels like a breath of fresh air. You feel the thrill of sitting on the edge of your seat all the time. Because of what? Because you can die from one hit?
Nah, because they think that the stat dump, it's so
again,
it's the masterpiece of increasing the difficulty.
No sense. Like, you didn't need Stone of Penance then. You could have just taken off your armor so that you can get one-shotted, and here is your breath of fresh air. Like, what are you guys smoking? Like, seriously? And why are you so desperate to make others smoke the same thing that you do? It doesn't make sense.
I know.
Respect other people's opinion.
No, that's never gonna work. No. I take this back. Sorry to interrupting you, but the only time when they will respect other people's opinion is when you kiss the game's butt first in certain aspects, and you apologize before making any accusation of the mechanics or of the stuff that you don't like.
That's so bad.
This is the stuff that you have to come up to, that you have to overcome. If you wish to start any kind of conversation in regards to the gameplay elements that you like or don't like, or the game's elements in general that you like or don't like, and you might think, again, this is something that comes from like bias, because we're talking about it, like we played for more than 200 hours each of us, and maybe like the opinion is spewed by this bad experience.
Well, I mean,
hold on a second, I'm gonna finish. The thing is that you may think it's not that big of a deal for the newcomers, and they simply will ignore it and just keep talking. No, my friends, again, you're wrong, because I was following like there's a certain people who was again like the newcomers for this game, and you know what happened the longer they stayed in the bubble of this like toxic swamp, they started to use the same rules as the ones with whom they talk. It's like the human behavior. You cannot avoid it if you want to stay in the group. It's the same thing in life. It's the same thing in every aspect. Like if the group has a direct or indirect influence on you, unintentionally, unintentionally, you will start behaving just like them. What do I mean by that? That individual, when he was a beginner just like myself. Initially, he again received the overwhelming toxic response. He continued like going through it over and over again, like just like me, content creator, whatever the case. But the posts that he created afterwards always started with phrases like, don't get me wrong, I like the game, or excuse me for like adopting, but or like something like this, like I apologize for not liking this, but overall I like the whole game. So he was making an excuse that some kind of elements he doesn't like directly, but overall he enjoys that game, so that other ones perceived him or received him not as bad, like as the part of, oh, he is almost a part of us, he just doesn't like this, he needs like a help in certain direction. This is how unintentional or indirect influence can make you directly or indirectly change your opinion on the subject.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like in old times when you go to the to your landlord, or maybe someone higher than that. Like, I'm sorry, my lord. I don't mean anything bad to say, but you know, like this this is not something that I prefer. So, if possible, can you like not punish me? I'm liking everything, but this particular thing, it's like this. It's to the point where like either the Reddit turns into this like. My personal take, I don't like Reddit. Like I hate it because the more I look at it, the more I see that it's a place where you don't want to be, especially as a content creator. They fucking hate content creators, and
they hate content creators that doing for them, this is somehow they perceive us in a way, those content creators that dare to objectively speak of the negative things about the game, their answer, like, you choose the wrong platform, why have you selected this platform if this platform has gathered around it the people who only like kiss the game's butt. Newsflash, my toxic brethrens, Reddit is, well, at least originally, right now is definitely the case, but it's not a platform designed specifically to kiss any game's butt. It's not according to the rule, it's not something that you have to obey to.
The name tag of the game in there, like Nioh Reddit subreddit, so what? I will going to come there, and if I have something that I want to express, that something that subjectively or objectively I consider bad, I will not come there as if saying like, oh, you know, like I like everything, but this particular point, like I don't really like it, but don't hit me. Like, no, if you will going to tell me that I will going to need to bend to someone to just like to express my own thing about, like, I've expressed good things, I've expressed bad things. If you are saying to me that I'm not allowed to open my mouth whenever I want to showcase that something doesn't work properly, or something doesn't work the way it should, or something
especially objectively,
or something objectively like has bugs or something like that, you expect me to just shut up because you like everything about the game? newsflash, in internet surface, I can also, if you go with the low road like this, I can too go with the same low road. And you know what? I can also say that I don't give a shit about what you're going to say. I can also, like, I can present my proofs, I can show my stuff. I will not just going to be like, I will just going to say it in words. I can show you, like, footages. And if you will going to still continue with this, oh, it's only in your, like, your stuff. It's the same thing, kind of. When they were trying to deny that the game has game bugs, it reminded me of people who were desperately trying to say that Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't have game bugs.
Yeah,
like,
or when
internet is overflown with showcase of the fact that the game has bugs.
Yeah, even after fixes.
But this group said that there is nothing wrong. Wow!
Yeah,
they have no proofs. They have nothing to say but saying words. If you say, like, give me proofs, why should I? Why do you even write them? Like, you write to just shit talk? No.
That's not really like the stuff that's why they're writing. I mean, we as the players, the one who respect, we cannot deny anyone for freedom of writing something or speaking, but in the context of doing, again, this whole point was to, is there any reason to, is there any way or any chance to have constructive discussion with some of the gameplay elements in regards to Nioh 2 with the majority, not with the selective minority, with the majority
Again,
of
yes,
people.
there has to be said this thing that not every person is bad.
Yeah,
not every person is bad. We had people who were genuinely good and caretaking, with whom you can build a constructive dialogue. However,
they are the minority.
This just, like,
they were the minority.
This, and again, I also don't understand this. What makes you triggered about constructive criticism? What makes you feel so ashamed when someone points a flaw about something that you like? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, to me, yeah, I agree with you, because to me, my favorite action or hack and slash RPG of all time is Diablo 2. But I acknowledge its flaws. I can talk about and give plethora of ways with which you could improve this game, and this is something that have already been done in other more modernized hack and slash RPG, despite the fact that I am eagerly waiting and most likely be playing Diablo 2 Resurrected on stream. I know of its flaws. I'm not ashamed of talking of it. I'm not feeling triggered that somebody mentioned that there is no end game, that the crafting system could have been improved, that something else is missing, and so on and so forth. If you're that, like, triggered by it, or by the fact that somebody asks you as, like, a simple question of, or proposes, like, to criticize the mechanics by giving you certain evidence, why do you feel the need of actively, like, but I know why. I'm gonna be explaining this a little bit, like, afterwards, after I'm gonna finish the statement. Why do you feel the need of actively, like, attacking them, harassing them to the point of actively influencing directly or indirectly them when they are going to be behaving just like you? I know why it's happening. Because the actual community, if it was you have to keep in mind two things. First of all, if the game would have been as great as they would think of it, this toxic majority, most other type of games with the similar elements would have implemented this. Like it was done, for instance, a very common example would be PvE system, or like raiding or dungeon system from World of Warcraft. almost every MMORPG to this date had copied and done some unique stuff, but it had copied World of Warcraft because of how good, in terms of the PvE rating system and dungeon, how good it was. How many games had copied most elements from Nioh? Nioh 1 or Nioh 2? Please name me in the comment section, like, how many games? I know of, like, probably some of the games with Souls-like element copied, like, the stand system, but I need, like, more examples. Had copied the supposedly an overwhelming masterpiece of the game. How many games had copied 90% of it? Can you name it, please?
How many people copied your progression system, for example, from Nioh 2? Like, this travesty of a randomness. How many games, like, because even the most grindiest games that there are on the planet Earth, there is not a single one that is being so mind-numbingly dumb as Nioh 2 is, with its randomness. And this is objectively bad, because you cannot tell me that it is good to have a progression system like this, where you get an item that can get an absolutely random stats.
Yeah, apparently it is, because it prevents one-shot builds.
No, it doesn't.
But we shall continue this discussion. So with the thought that I stopped on, basically, ladies and gentlemen, you might be thinking, well, if it's like that, what's your point? What's your leading to? Well, I'm leading to a very specific stuff. Well, first of all, some few examples of the stuff that I had encountered with. Well, I guess I should also name how it influences directly the developers, and this is going to lead us to our next major transition point. Developers need a feedback, if it's a positive or a negative one. But saying stuff like we want the same stuff but more, it's not a good feedback. That's number one. Number two, it's objectively not a good feedback. Number two, saying posts and comments, even though they are inevitable, of the stuff that, we are intentionally are not kissing the game's butt, etc., it doesn't lead to any improvement. This is why most of the systems that had been quote-unquote upgraded in Nioh 2, they had been upgraded on the surface level by just adding more. Not working on the stuff that, at least not as a whole, working on the stuff that had been existing previously. Instead, they've just added more. Why? Because probably is the feedback from Nioh 1, at least back then, it could have been made as an excuse. So it's like the first game in the series, so the feedback from that was, it's like a testing the water kind of situation. So let's just see what will happen in the sequel. But adding more doesn't save the problem. Adding more is the same thing that World of Warcraft Modern 1 suffers from. It's parasiting on the same stuff. You're not improving the stuff. And developers themselves, when they are reading this, they say, oh, we don't need to do any improvements. We could just do the same stuff. We have already pre-made assets. We had already everything up and going in terms of animations. We don't need to create new ones. We can just, like we have talked about, for instance, with some weapons, like my brother mentioned Kusarigama, nothing changed. Everything stayed the same except for boss kills. Because, well, why bother? Like, everything apparently works perfectly fine.
Hitboxes are bad.
And so on and so forth.
Objectively bad.
And this is not leading to any kind of an improvement. And if you think, like, I'm gonna slowly lead to my, next point. If you think the community cannot influence the developers directly, you're wrong. For instance, I'm gonna give you two examples, the major ones. One would be the game called Resident Evil 6, and one would be the game called Dark Souls 2. Even though, just like Nioh and Nioh 2, those games sold overwhelmingly well, to the point where they were hyped, they were selling like hotcakes, and so on and so forth, the feedback that the developers had gotten both from Dark Souls 2 and from Resident Evil 6, moving onwards to Resident Evil 7 and 8, had led to the either complete overhaul or to return to the formula which worked great in the previous games and improving on it, not just adding more for the sake of giving more. That's the Dark Souls 2 route. When it comes to overhaul, it was Resident Evil 6. If it would have been all flowers and pink skies, developers From Software would have just created Dark Souls 3 in the format of Dark Souls 2 by adding like the more stuff. And Dark Souls 2, both Dark Souls 2 and Resident Evil 6 games were huge. They are huge in terms of how much content you can get out of it. But the bigger content or the amount of content doesn't mean that the content is equal. It doesn't mean that the content you have added in terms of how much you've added, it's good overall in terms of how equally good it is. And bigger doesn't mean better as a whole.
And I want to add one particular thing. Like, it is understandable, like easy understandable, that this game needs, like, developer needs to receive feedback, because they don't... You can clearly see that they don't play it, like, as much. They don't test majority of the stuff themselves. Like, they don't. It's not your Final Fantasy XIV, where you have the main guy who's responsible, like, the main, like, the CEO of the Final Fantasy XIV is the person. He's a dedicated player, he plays a lot of games, he plays his own games, like, he's even participating, like, people are even playing with him in some raids. So he knows, and the people with whom he works, they know what they're doing. Here, say for example, like, you are a game developer, but you don't really know how like, your game functions, especially, like, the end game part. How will he know that he was on the right track? Well, say for example, like, in Nioh 1 they had 999 floors of the underworld. People said, we want less. Here's your 138 floors of underworld plus depths. But did the problem go away when it comes to, like, the rest of the stuff related to in-game? No. And now what? Now you say, like, we want the same but more? What does that mean now? So we want 500 floors of the same bullshit? Like, this is what you want? Like, this is mind-numbing. Like, what kind of... We want the same but more. You want more randomness? You want more shitty story? We can deliver you! Like, whoa! It's easy, like, we can deliver you! We're gonna give you, like, 500 floors of the underworld next game. You will be happy. You will be happy, like, someone will be happy. Someone will not be happy. This, like, the feedback is needed. Positive and negative. Always needed, because there should not be a disconnect between the, especially with the projects that are lasting for more than one game, or the projects like online projects, MMO projects. There has to be a connection between developers and a community that gives developers positive and negative feedback. It should not be like either there is no connection whatsoever, like World of Warcraft, for example, where it led into a complete catastrophe. Nioh 2, for example, where they don't receive proper feedback because majority is licking the game's butt, and nothing constructively is being given to developers so that they don't know that direction that they go in certain aspects don't work. No, like, there has to be this balanced road. Like, we receive this, we give you this. We receive this, we give you this. It's always like working together. We're making game for you, so give us your feedback. Give us something to work with. Because, again, say for example, you are at the job, you're doing some kind of project, and you did it, but you did it with several mistakes. No one's pointing out those mistakes to you once. Then you're given another project. You do more mistakes, assuming that you didn't do mistakes because none of those mistakes were pointed out to you. You make more mistakes. And then, at a certain point, you will be fucking fired of your job. Seriously, like... understand this! A feedback is simple thing.
It's not only about, yes, the feedback is crucial, but it's not only about the feedback, since we're discussing, after all, like the relationship between community as a whole, toxic community, and newcomers with developers and with the players who would want to become experienced like ourselves. The things that alienating, irritating and aggravating those players like us is such things as a newcomer, like you say, oh, like this is just a tutorial difficulty, you still have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 hours to go before the game actually becomes great. We already, again, just like with always, debunked this myth by saying first difficulty outside of some BS things on Way of the Nioh is actually the hardest one. Not the Way of the Nioh. It's vice versa. And for some people, like let's say for some archetypes or with some weapons, it's gonna be even more stupider to say that, as if stupider is even the word. Just because in the melee system you will be unlocking, excluding those hard to judge on the fly boss skills, you will be unlocking 80% of your moveset and you will be using it already. So there isn't gonna be like plus 80% more that you will use on the 4 difficulties. But what if a person, and also to complete the first difficulty fully, like as a newcomer comes to this game and he or she receives that kind of a response full of hatred that he's playing differently, full of the stuff that, oh, you need to invest bajillion hours into this game if you want to experience the true quote-unquote stuff that this game has to offer. To beat the freaking original campaign fully, it takes somewhere around from 45 to 60 hours depending on the build and the tempo that you're playing if you want to clear everything. That's a huge load of time. It's not a huge load of time for an action RPG as a whole, but in general, when it comes to investing, how much of free time one is willing to invest in a game, especially if the game has questionable stuff or he's not liking how the melee system functions, magic functions, and so on and so forth, and you would ask him to invest twice as more, 3 times more, 4 times more time for the random opportunity for it to become good, just because this is the, you know, this how is it like called in English? This trial of initiation. Like everyone needs to go pass by do the trial of initiation to become a member of the community, to proudly say yourself that you're a veteran of Nioh 2.
Proudly say yourself, I like wasted hundreds of hours.
Like
when I could have done something better with
my
life.
Like this is the stuff that instead of saying stuff like, again, I have nothing against people who like this game. If you are liking it with not a blind fanboyism glasses, like we, for example, we adore Diablo 2, but we acknowledge their faults. We could talk about it all day. We acknowledge how we could improve it. So it's not like we are blindly protecting everything, oh, just because this is my experience and I don't want anything to bash from it. This doesn't help anyone, not at all. And again, this is something that we're gonna talk about it later. It is right now we're gonna be switching to reading comments from how badly it influenced the minds of certain individuals, both experienced and experts, in terms of what do they want in possible Nioh 3 sequel, and how badly or how terribly it had influenced the developers of creating the Final Fantasy, I don't even know how to call it, Happy Chaos Edition. I'm gonna call it from this point moving forward like this. This is, in regards to the Final Fantasy stuff, this is going to be like our next podcast that we will do after this. And you will see when we get to it that it's actually a freaking degradation and regress from the ideas that went in the improvement of both combat and graphics of Nioh 2 in comparison to that freaking garbage.
They are using, keep in mind, they're using assets. They're using assets from Nioh 2. almost to the point where your main character in that new game is William with short hair and a different weapon. Like, even to the point where some enemies have the same moveset, have the same pattern, they just look visually slightly different. But they still manage to make it worse, and I will not going to listen to this like, oh, you cannot judge it because it's still like it was just a beta.
No, that argument is BS, and you know why? Because when the demo and beta for both Nioh 1 and Nioh 2 came out, especially for Nioh 1, people were blown the freaking hell away by how, first of all, how challenging it was, to the point where it got actually nerfed on release. And secondly, they were eager to try that. They would want to say, okay, like it has Souls-like element, but the combat looks more refined, more in-depth, and so on and so forth. When you look at the freaking Happy Chaos Edition, but more on that later, you will see like that's the freaking, again, I already talked about, it's not a step back. It's like somebody was blown away back like 10,000 years backwards in time for the, like, you're starting, it's not in Nioh 1, you're starting in the fucking prehistorical age when talking about games and how badly this game looks, as in comparison to both Nioh and in comparison to both Final Fantasy, which is atrocious in terms of, not Final Fantasy being atrocious, in terms of this game, how it is going to somehow appeal to the Final Fantasy audience, despite the fact that there were already numbered installments like Final Fantasy VII Remake, and to an extent Final Fantasy 15 and 14 MMORPG that was doing a way better job in it in comparison to that.
And again, I'm going to state the same thing that I've stated. There is a trend with this particular studio. Ninja Gaiden, their new Ninja Gaiden series that they were doing for quite some time, it had like 4 installments, I believe, it started to degrade after the second one. So they continue with the trend of the fact that their like sequels and possible like future projects are going downhill. The longer it goes, the worse it gets. I tend to believe that a lot of it comes also from the fact that they don't receive the proper like feedback, because again you cannot really receive a normal feedback if your community is toxic as shit.
It's the same thing with World of Warcraft.
Yes.
It's the same thing with Riot Games and League of Legends.
Yes,
it's the same thing with Dota.
Because at a certain point they will either going to stop listening whatsoever, or they will just going to say, well, your opinion doesn't matter. Like you say that those people's opinion who say that there are problems are invalid, they at a certain point will going to tell you, well, your opinion is invalid. Like Riot Games did this when they said, like, we have more than 200 years collective experience.
And Blizzards are doing the same thing by saying, we know what we can do best.
What? Like, deserved. It is deserved, because you guys don't understand the simple truth.
Because
you, as the player, you have power. You are not just someone who is the person who gives money. You are not just the person who gives money. So why do you have to, like, this is also a modern trend nowadays, when there is something bad, there is really something bad, whether it comes to games, whether it comes to movies, whether it comes to music, whether it comes to anything, you should not say bad stuff about it. Like, why? Why not? Why do you always say this? If you don't like, don't play. If you don't do this, don't do this. Is it so bad to say like a word constructive criticism? Is it forbidden?
It's not.
Is like a monster going to come bite everyone if they will going to start saying that, oh, something is not perfect? No.
It's not really all. It's not only about constructive criticism. It's like you have to take everything from granted from the developers just because they had not the privilege or the right to dictate how you should think, alongside with the toxic members of the community who had their own self-created rules, and you as the beginner, the one who doesn't understand or doesn't fit in the ranks, is gonna get immediately rejected by the majority, until you will be, like I have given you example, that individual that had made the post and later on started to apologize in advance for the stuff that he might say in the posts,
But this
and
is not the way out.
saying that he likes the game as a whole, even though you clearly see that he's doing it out of force. It's not his genuine desire to apologize.
This is the way out for the weak-minded, or if you are desperate. Like, someone may say, well, now you are harassing like the community, you harass the game, now you harass community and developers, you are like in search for attention. No. Simply, I'm going to say, like, I don't give a shit like how many people will going to be like watching my streams related to Nioh 2 or something like this. I'm not asking for people like to come for me, ask advice. I'm not your mentor in this game or anything like that. I'm not asking for you to subscribe just to support the fact that like we don't like this game. No, it's us expressing our opinion about the game. Just
and it's not only us. Like I have mentioned, there were a lot of individuals, newcomers to the game, that are dropping the game. The people were divided in several categories. Either you're gonna drop the game on the, I freaking hate this tutorial term, but okay, let's name it like on the first difficulty, tutorial difficulty. The second option, you would go through it out of force, out of habit, just because of the principle that you would do like us. You're gonna go to the end, you're gonna beat it, but you're not gonna be too satisfied with it. Or you are going to be a member of the toxic community and alienating the others. But the main reason why this toxic community think of this game as a whole, as if it's like a big one, but in reality it's not the case. The main reason why they want more people, because why they want to become like more popular, because of several factors. First of all, they are envying of the other games that utilizes the same elements, a la Dark Souls, a la Devil May Cry, and so on and so forth, and many other many other games with action RPG elements. They are envy of it. This is why they have said that this game, they would want this game to become more popular. By, I don't know by what means. Usually the game, at least when talking about good games, it becomes, even niche ones, it becomes more popular. Not because you suddenly advertise, if we're talking about good games, not because you suddenly want to advertise or talk everyone about how good the game actually is, because the game mechanic has to be, for the most part, working perfectly. Well, if we're talking about Darkest Dungeon, niche game, but many people, even those who haven't played it, know about it. Same thing with Dark Souls. It's not, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated, overblown with the mechanics like Nioh. Same thing with Dark Souls. It's a niche game. Sekiro, niche game. Bloodborne, also niche game, and so on and so forth. Excuse me, Binding of Isaac, it's a niche game. What else? Just on the top of my head. Many other, like, niche Hades. You've played Hades on the last year. It's also a niche game, but many people are aware of it, and still aware of its existence. It doesn't have to be, we are envying of the popularity of other franchise, and we're gonna justify our product by being not so popular, by saying
or
shit.
They don't understand why our game is good because they are filthy casuals. No, guys, like, understand this about your game. You, like, again, we've debunked that thing about the fact that this game is not that hard. Just fucking understand this. Like, if you don't go and ruin your life by making this game harder for you, by inserting those, like, sticks in your legs and trying to, like, move with them, it's like, you yourself created this idea. Like, again, it's the same with Dark Souls games. Like, I personally consider that Souls games in general, like their difficulty and the way how they are being viewed, especially like Nioh as well, it's overrated when it comes to difficulty. Like, it isn't, like, it is not impossible. It's hard, but it is not impossible. And I don't know why you consider, like, why you consider those who play other Souls games like scrubs, like filthy scrubs. You are calling Elden Ring, before it even released, you are calling, giving it names like Elden Cringe. Like, you are already like, this is the way how you want.
That's already other sign of like alienating many other players.
How you want to play this game? You want to go the low road how you usually do, but. Like, what's your problem? What's your freaking fucking problem?
The problem is they cannot produce any kind of meaningful, most of them cannot at least, meaningful counter-argument, or at least stuff that can justify or can provide any meaningful evidence to the stuff that they are like, without any fanboyism, without any without major fanboyism, or without any white knighting the stuff from the developers. So, and yes, it leads to the bad results. Again, like like I and my brother said, you had the power to influence the developers, even as the community, even if you are not as big as you might think they are. Because if you would put things into perspective, right? I already mentioned such examples like Resident Evil 6, how it changed, it got completely overhauled in Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8. Same thing with Dark Souls 2 example. Not many people liked the way how they have shaped Dark Souls 2, and after Bloodborne, returning to Dark Souls 3 had been in a return to the like mixture of two ideas, Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls and Bloodborne, excuse me. So to combine something that something that is already well known for everyone and works best, they combined the two, and the result were great. You could do the same thing for Nioh 3 instead of just blindly protecting the developers for one reason or another by justifying like many objective flaws that the game has. Don't need to do that. Like this led to, in many instances, we had also bad examples. Like this had led to some games in which dire state they are, like Diablo 3 or World of Warcraft or many other games that I could name, where if you give the developers, if you don't give the developers a lot of the feedback, if you keep alienating newcomers, and if you keep transforming those players that are staying inside your game into the member of this toxic swamp, you'll quickly realize that you not only do not have any kind of influence anymore on the decision making behind the creative team that will design for your new expansion or new installment, you will be fed up with the same thing, or with mostly the same thing over and over again, just because it was you who created that route. It's not
the
like
same thing basically happened with the Ninja Gaiden series. Same thing. Like, I don't necessarily know like what was like happening when it comes to the community feedback, but if it's like the situation is like this, like with this game, and I understand what happened. Like, you got what you deserve. Like, it was you who got fed up with basically having the same stuff, just worse and worse each time. But you are always saying that everything works perfectly. And now where is your Ninja Gaiden series? Being sold to you again in the form of like a PC version or something like that?
Which is not even the best port, ironically enough.
Yeah, like
so much for PC Master Race.
This is what you get. You want the same thing to happen with Neo series and whatever the hell they were going to do with the Happy Chaos edition and all that stuff. Like, this is your fault.
And this will directly lead to this conclude the final part of this podcast. We're going to be reading the comments of what do people want in terms of improvement, and how much people actually legit want an improvement in Nioh 3, at least the one who played it. And you could tell by the comments, you will tell, and we were going to be explaining by the comments who have completed the game entirely, because yes, we forgot to talk about the other toxic part of the communities. When some people suggested something both to us as newcomers or to other players, when we asked them about have you completed this game yourself on the amount of difficulties that you have described, on the same amount of difficulties, typically the response from the major half was, well, I quitted the game on the 3rd difficulty, on the 4th difficulty, somewhere in between, just because I was bored out of everything repeats itself way too often. Again, this doesn't motivate anyone to continue playing throughout this game for that longer for the same period of time as we did, especially if you keep alienating and aggravating all the other players. But enough of that. Let's actually showcase the comments, or at least
dive in the
swampland, in the toxic swamp, reading some of the comment section from Reddit to see what people. Calling some of them people are actually kind of hard, but nonetheless, what individuals would want to add for the possible Nioh 3. Let's go. I'm gonna be pausing the video, gonna be switching here, checking that everything works, yep. So, the post itself, if Nioh 3 could be possible, I'm gonna zoom in a bit, so that everything works great, yep. Good morning. Lately, after playing a ton more of Nioh 2 and replaying Nioh 1 and been falling absolutely in love with the gameplay, again, this, okay, I'm gonna reserve my judgment for now on its story, but throughout it all, I was curious to hear what other people think about if Team Ninja decides to make a Nioh 3. What would that be like? What mechanics would you want to see, yada yada yada. Let's see what people have to say. We got first quite a good answer, actually. Less RNG for things like soul cores and accessories, or at least some way to reroll a line even if it involves a lot of work. Wow, I agree with this, actually meaningful stuff.
Especially when we count the fact that...
We count the amount of upvotes, first of all, and we count
the amount of crafting materials you have. This is easily
doable.
That you can do, because for the most part, the majority of the crafting items are useless. You will not going to be using them. So why not use them here?
So what does the individual has to say more? Yokai Shift skill customization, like how each weapon moveset can be customized. There should be one for Yokai Shift as well. I'd say mostly
that's like a combination of living weapon plus Yokai Shift.
Yeah, partially agree. You should be able to unlock more active skills from the shifting skill tree or boss drops and then assign them in addition to Yokai abilities. Like
that
just
would make the shifting builds kinda more interesting to play.
More viable. For this I can say more viable, because right now shifting build is not existent, it's trash. Compared to living weapon
and you're
in Nioh 1
always
it's
stuck
trash.
with three weapons moveset.
More interesting elemental attacks for weapons. I'm thinking of Onimusha, where having a sword imbued with lighting actually lets you call lightning bolts down on the enemy when you attack them. Hey, I actually agree with that too, because this thing that he's talking about, bosses can do that sometimes. Black Samurai can do this when he imbues his two-handed axe with lighting. When he attacks, he summons a lighting nut, like Magatsu Warrior is doing with the Force Wave. Actually, lighting strikes you from the top down.
Yeah, there is somewhat of a thing that is kind of similar. Basically, with Kusarigama, say for example, I imbue my weapon with lightning, I can press triangle, which is the... Not press and hold triangle, just press triangle when he tosses his metal part of the Kusarigama, and it fires the lightning sphere in the target's direction.
True. I could have had way more for that, but at least this comment made more sense. What we really need is another Onimusha. I do not know how good the Onimusha type of game is. I think the Onimusha comments are gonna be mostly ignored by us simply because we cannot judge or justify how well it is. We haven't played it.
Yep.
There was a recent remaster for Onimusha for PS4. I don't know whether it exists on PC. Onimusha Tactics, okay, made by Team Ninja 2. I don't know how good it is still. Sekiro, no, I don't wish to combine the style of Sekiro with Nioh 2. I don't think it's gonna work that well. For Sekiro, I had my own fair share of things that could have been improved, so instead we're skipping onwards. I like speccing into magic at first, but it became either broken or unusable, depending on whether you had time to get it off, and it's almost entirely two spell types: buffs, debuffs, and projectiles. Well, I wouldn't say it's unusable, or broken per se. I'd say it's necessary. That's the correct word that I can describe it.
I don't really like.
I don't really also like this.
Magic falls into two types of categories, like buffs, debuffs, and projectiles. But wait a second. But that's it when it comes to like. Even in MMORPGs,
yeah, you
it's
could
the same. It's buffs, it's debuffs, and projectiles. There's nothing more you can add on it. What more you can add on it?
It's not. Here's the thing. I think this individual. This is just an assumption. It may be phrased incorrectly, but this is just an assumption by saying that you are over reliant on magic and ninjutsu in most cases. In almost all the cases in this game, I'd say, to get it right. Maybe it's like that, but the general description of the magic as a whole, yes, it's like buffs, debuffs, and spells. So what else do you have? Maybe more utility for the spells, something like that, instead of
buffs and debuffs.
I don't know. It's hard to decide on the fly. Let's move onwards, I'd say. I'd simply ask that they remove all lock damage effects on weapons. We all know to avoid them, as they are significantly inferior to temporable damage scaling per level stats. RNG is tricky enough. It's taunting to get the perfect star effects on a Pagoda Tonfa, otherwise give us more weapons, more yokai, more levels, more guardian spirits. No, I do not agree. When it comes to remove lock stats, yes. When it comes to give us more weapons, more yokai, more levels, more guardian spirits, as the icing on the cake, yes, but it should not be the overwhelming focus of it, because giving more, as we have discussed earlier on this podcast, is not going to solve the problem.
More here is going to work. I think that the amount of guardian spirits and soul cores and stuff like this is enough. I think that what needs to be done is to
more fleshed out them more.
You need to make them more or less viable, because just like with like weapons and stats and stuff like this, there is like almost like a 70 to 80% of those soul cores that are basically just useless. They just
there. The same thing.
But only usable in some certain like very niche sort of situations, but mostly will never going to be used. So giving more is not going to do like anything. Again, more
doesn't equal better.
Yes, because again, have to understand, like, do you want more, but more will going to be meaning like less balanced or unbalanced at all, or you want less, but that is going to be usable overall?
I'd say less, but not necessarily less, but more fleshed out in a way, because we already, at least the ones who have the guts to speak up in terms of the objective criticism of the Nioh 2, we are fed up to the maximum with the overwhelming amount of trash that doesn't have any kind of significant value. It just exists for the sake of either confusing or being there, and creates the illusion of this game being way bigger than it actually is, like with stats, with
more weapons. I also digress with more weapons. Like, I mean,
let's go over through the rest of the stuff. Like, yeah, more yokai, maybe like the enemy variety could be different, but again, I would say it would tune in fine with the better level design as a whole, not necessarily just more yokais. Open world would be incredible, but not requires. Open world, it's not gonna be good for the Nioh style of game. I wouldn't say, again, I don't mind mission structure, but the levels themselves had to be way more not balance is not the right word. Way more well structured.
They
in
are
terms
struggling with like here's the problem, especially in Neo 2. They are struggling already with maintaining like the um, with making those level designed
level design memorable.
Yeah, and that's with them not being tied to open world. Just imagine, because creating game in open world, creating properly the game in open world, is not an easy task. You have to think about one transitioning into this, one transition into that. They also have to be interconnected and stuff like that. There has to be like some kind of backtracking and like yada yada yada. But you also have to think about the game bugs that might happen, and you also have to think about this. And like this would be a very problematic stuff to do for them.
Yeah, true. Okay, let's read next. More yokais. Yeah, there's going to be discussion about yokais too. Person are saying what slug damage and effect is supposed to mean and how to avoid it. What is already good as it is, the best thing. What? That's the comment that I don't like from those type of people. It's already good as it is, so the best thing that could do is add more guardian spirits, armor, weapons, yokais, etc. No, again, adding more, again, it's saying this is not a good feedback. This is not a good feedback, because by saying it's already good, you by default means that every mechanic works perfectly. There is nothing that you could improve upon. You could only add more because everything works as a clock. And you could not provide any meaningful criticism. Comments like this, like
and
it's
again,
like
adding more.
Adding more does not resolve the problems that already exist.
There is a problem with the fact that there is more, but a lot of it just doesn't work.
Hold up a second, I forgot to do one thing.
Like, that's a problem. Like, if you add more, but there is a problem that more doesn't really work, then why add more?
Okay, let's read the rest. Nunchucks maybe...
Assassination skills, we skip that. I want to see a proper fucking backstab on all targets, on most of the targets.
Yeah.
I don't want just the heavy attack from the backstab, which only has an animation of backstab on 2 enemies.
I would want to see not necessarily assassination per se, but more so a grab. Like any kind of grab that allows you to go through the blocks.
Because for certain enemies, like, yes, you can backstab them, but only it looks like you hit them with the heavy attack from behind.
Locations, more mystical areas, less castles, give us deep forests, mountaintops. That's tricky. That's tricky to pull off. You know, with the forests and mountaintops example, deserted villages, fields at midnight. With the game engine and the graphics that Neo 2 has, the local forests or whatever it's called, like the little areas, they look bland, and it's hard to decipher
in the first DLC.
It's hard to decipher the enemies. And it was like partially in the second one.
It was bad. I would say, like, because the world is not living, like, you're still going to feel like you are running in those, like, the same corridors, but you just have, like, the bamboo trees. Like, it's like you have to change the engine that the game runs on. Because currently it's like, I don't feel the fact that the world is alive when I look at those backgrounds. It's not like I look at the, say for example, Sekiro, I see, wow, the picture on the background also complements with the stuff that like happens overall.
Anyway, let's look like on the more stuff like yokais. Yeah, I agree. Weapons, we already gave opinion on that. No, you need items. Maybe 1 to 2, but you need an overhaul or at least redesign and upgrade of the all of the existing weapons to the point of it being not only more fleshed out but also well balanced next to each other. Yes, it will more for sure still retain noticeable noticeable weaknesses, but it has to have an overwhelming strength. I already talked about how slow two-handed weapons have no place in such games in Nioh 2 until you will create a good hit advantage, a stuff that either makes enemies more staggerable by even hitting them as it is like in other games with Souls-like elements into it. Not just, oh, you hit them, hyper armor, here's a million frames of recovery, good luck dodging that, it's your problem, and so on and so forth. Soul Cores, let us choose which version of Yokai will be used. Give pool of moves. Yokai has different forms.
Wait. The choice between living weapon and Yokai shift. I immediately thought about how they could have played out the story of Nioh 2.
Oh, don't even start. I know what you're saying. It's like your character could even become a demon or
have one character as he is, like a shifter, and that's
the bad side of him when
the person, like I forgot how the name of that girl was.
Oh, Mumio.
Mumio. Let her be the second, like, you can choose between two characters, like Mumio or that guy, and she's going to be using cleaving weapons.
That's too much work for that.
Well, that's too much work, but I came up with the concept of, like, having two meaningful protagonists in one game. And holy shit, you can even make a DLC, like, explain, like, where you play as
William, right?
As Mumio. As Mumio, like, pre what happened to before she met with the main protagonist. Like, wow! I'm a genius. I'm a fucking genius.
Yeah, maybe, but it has, like, it needs... That's an interesting concept, but it needs more work to be done.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that it's easy
basically colors, both armor and weapons. I don't think it's that necessary. Colors, it's like an icing on the cake, maybe. A heavy stretch here allows us to play campaigns from earlier Nioh games. That's completely unnecessary. With all the new system of weapons. No, because of the fact that it doesn't add any... this will be just an overstretch of the existing formula, and it's, in my opinion, it does not fixes the already existing problem. Again, this is just adding more, just for the sake of adding more. Okay, inventory system that you don't have to clean out so much. It's very hard to understand for new players what keep and what to drop. The storehouse is not the answer either, because it's not really simple to figure out early in the game. Yeah, I agree. I've spent so many hours selling or donating gear to playing the game.
Loot filters.
But again,
absolutely.
Look at his formula. Look at how he's formulating the intentions. Still love it though, and I've never spent as many hours in any AA game I have Nioh. Probably the best bang for your buck because of how much content. Again,
This last sentence is like...
The last sentence...
Don't dislike me, guys.
Yeah, like, I don't understand... again, this is the evidence for some people needing to apologize for something that they have said that could attract the toxic players, toxic commentators to that post, to the comment that they made. Don't need to you have expressed a bad idea, but you know what disremember, yeah, you know what, why he apologized on the previous post. I believe it was like a month or 2 months ago. Somebody actually said about like loot filter or like a better inventory system. You know what the response that he received because of his critique? He said, because he wasn't apologetic at the end, he received response in the format of, well, you could just sell your stuff more often and not
after every single mission,
and not fill up your inventory to the maximum, and this is and you don't have to go over to the multiple items that you have in your inventory.
It's like, here's Diablo topic for you, like, wow. So in Diablo 2 you have the quite limited inventory space, so like the mod was created that kind of increased your inventory space. Well, objectively the inventory space in Diablo 2 is super limited, so the thing to increase the inventory is not something like... It's limited, so it was increased by the mods. So, like, there is no, like, no point to say that, oh, no, you just have to go and sell stuff. No, like, no. increase it, and that's it. Like,
yeah, but again, like this is just the proof of how one person being. This is not just us that we're being being alienated or like influenced by some of the toxic members of the community. You can clearly see in some of the posts that they're making. Why do you apologize, saying sorry for the good idea? Just because you said that the inventory system is not working properly and it doesn't have any filters, it's like a mess to go through. And then you say, I'm apologize. Like, I'm still loving this game, though, as if, like, oh, excuse me for giving this good idea.
guys, never fall into this one. Like, never, like, if you want to express your opinion, you're giving your opinion, don't say, like, oh, sorry, but I still, like, love everything.
Yeah, like, that's nonsense. Like, that's your nonsense.
It sounds very strange. Much like if the game has no bad sides whatsoever, it will going to raise a suspicion. That's just how it is.
For an inexperienced, it might sound okay, but if you had watched the podcast or had the pleasure, quote unquote, meeting those members yourself, you would know what we're talking about. Next. One customization, Yokai Shift, Soul Course and Guardian Spirits. I get that grind is the reason why I play so much, but some more control would be cool. More control over grind, yes, but the first sentence I don't get it. Like, more customization for Yokai Shift, he probably meant like choosing manually the stuff that you want to get on it. So this is why he implied control. More weapon types, yeah, but you need to work on, with the caveat that you need to work on the older ones. Design my own armor set, pick up the pieces of selection that make your unique set. That's fine, but it's like icing on the cake. Wait a second, like pick out pieces out of a selection to make your unique set with its own perks and graces? That's never gonna happen. No.
You
that sounds
can
cool,
do it
but
with cheating, but
yeah. Like to see the concept done in China.
I wouldn't want to see the concept even if it was happening in Moldova.
Yeah,
seriously, like I am okay with something like some other game, like to play it, but it's just we are speaking about like what gameplay wise and other things wise could be done.
That's
better.
a strange thing. I wish it was easier to allow multiple builds and skill point allocation without resetting everything. Probably he meant like removing some points, not all of it.
Instead of all
probably.
Points.
I know that a lot of game developers are really hesitant to add skill respects, I'm guessing for replayability issues, but what if there was like a boss fight midways through the game that you could revisit, and afterwards it will let you respect whatever you want for a certain period of time? What? That's a strange thing. I don't know how to comment it. Remove depths, make a lot more endgame content, like new... No. Remove depths, make a lot more endgame content. Yes, like New Game Plus or Dream Neo or side missions to farm exclusive items or map mods like Jewels. Side missions, regions to increase drop item while mod the enemies you'll encounter. Open world. No. Add to the endgame mods in the way... the solution to fix, quote-unquote, the game mod.
Shorten the amount of difficulties, but add
more variety.
Exclusive content in form of those. He said, like, missions, side missions to farm exclusive items. Well, then, here's your, like, stuff, like, on this, and this difficulty, new missions are going to appear, and, like, they will be new. As if, like, on other difficulties, you cannot play them.
Yeah, like something like this.
Exclusive content with exclusive enemies, exclusive bosses, and exclusive stuff.
Here again, this has the crafting system is...
Okay, no, because crafting system, we explained that...
It's there, just for the sake of being there, and that's it.
Its point is very vague, and in most instances is quite useless.
Have a lot of RNG for a single player game? True. That has to be fixed ASAP. Less RNG for late game builds? True. If a player makes it to Dream of the Nioh, I think they should have given an easier way to get stuff. So yeah, just RNG changes. Not early in the game, just a late difficulty. Has earned it probably for 100 hours at that point. True. Nunchucks, okay, like I get it, this kind of sounds silly, but the ability to dye armor gotta look styling. As an icing on the cake only. Extended parry system. Parries are unreliable for the most part, and I wouldn't count on them when I have a silver of health left, but they take up a significant portion of the skill tree, when in reality they are rarely essential to the gameplay. Case in point would be Sekiro's parry. Most players can replicate parry with accuracy on enemy attack, but I doubt Nioh player base feel the same way with the Water Shadow or Backwave. The thing about parries in Nioh versus parries in Sekiro in general, you have to understand two things. Why they are unreliable. Two options. Two things. Number one, you can only do them against humans. Number two, the speed of the combat is insanely fast. Well, for the standard of this type of game. So to manually parry someone in Nioh is way harder compared to Sekiro. Like milestone harder, especially if we're talking about fast bosses like from the DLCs. This is why they are unreliable. Another thing that they are unreliable, the damage that you come up, like the reward for the damage, it's shit. Like for the parry that you do, you can only do one hit, like a counter, I get it, right? But some enemies, and you immediately put the enemies on their backs, like on the ground. Some of them have quick get-up attacks, some of them have very devastating moves. Immediately afterwards, there's a hyper armor situation that you need to take into account. There's also a situation where you need to take into account the quick get-up. Remember, we talked about the fact that if you're using slow weapon, good freaking luck attacking the enemy on the ground who quickly gets up and break your face. This is why they are unreliable. Expanding the open world would be nice. What do you mean expanding on the open world? This game doesn't have the open world system. I know this is an action game, but instead of only have instance quest, it would be nice if I can traverse the world. It doesn't. This is not necessary. If the... I'm gonna give like an example of the older game.
People are so obsessed with open world games. Like, this is... You don't understand. You might end up in a situation like... Say, for example, why I consider like Red Dead Redemption 2 open world. Like, I've played the game from start to finish. I've played a lot in it. But it's empty. Like, you want to see the stuff that, like, you want to see the world, but do you want to see the world so much so that you are going to spend hours just looking blankly, nothing? There is no action, there is no, like, events, nothing happening, just... a world and you and its loneliness.
I wouldn't say open world per se. I would want something that Souls-like formula has, or Darksiders. Yeah, Darksiders, right? Yeah. Where you have the example of it being like a Metroidvania type of games, where you have multiple interconnected areas, and with the hub area that you can go back to. This is more suitable than a completely open world type of game in this kind of genre.
They are not going to go with any routes of open world games. Considering with the fact that how much they're rushing each of their new games, there is going to be zero chance that even if they will going to create an open world, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess, I'm going to tell you this way. Like, there's going to be bugs all over the place, there's going to be like emptiness, the graphics will going to downgrade, and all of that kind of stuff. Like, and they also haven't really done any open world game whatsoever.
Before. Yeah, so for them they had no experience, they could screw up.
Nioh 2, Onimusha. Like Onimusha, all...
It's all closed-spaced games.
Yeah. Don't ask them to do this. It's like, you can create...
This will create more problems.
You can create meaningful... Not meaningful, but more good-looking locations in those stage mode-based gameplay than in open world.
Well, one of the example we could give is the Tenchu game from the PS1. Tenchu 1 and Tenchu 2 had memorable areas, despite the fact that it was heavily limited by the PS1 hardware. But still, and it took place in the gorgeous sightseeings, despite the fact that it being a mission structure. So what gives? Like, you don't have to have open world to make the game look beautiful. Just saying.
And again, also think about, like, this will going to severely shorten the amount of those side quests and, for example, like, how are you going to farm, say, those boss skills if it's in like bosses don't revive.
I don't say it's gonna save you. On the contrary, it's gonna prolong even the unnecessary prolonged type of game that the Nioh 2 actually was, and I believe Nioh 2, Nioh 1 had the same problem.
I'm just very skeptical about like insert open world into game A or game B and the result will going to be great. No.
Okay, let's read through the rest of the stuff, and I want to pay attention to something that I do not agree on. The answer to the parry situation. I dare to say it's not true. Most Nioh parries are reliable, and it's not hard to pull off. Says the guy who gives the following sentence. You need to practice the timings. Every parry has its own unique timing, and you also need to pay attention to the enemy's attack too. And he says next, pay attention to the stance and weapon of your opponent. If he's on high stance, you can anticipate his slower attack. If he's low stance, his attacks will be very fast, so you need to parry immediately. My boy, let me actually say you are contradicting yourself.
Anticipate.
It's either you don't know what you're talking about, and speaking of anticipation, that's BS. Because you're saying in high stance, I'm gonna debunk this immediately by saying the same stuff. If an enemy goes in high stance, you wanna parry, and instead of slow attack, he's gonna do the combo strings, you're dead. You're dead on the spot. If he's gonna do a charge attack and you miss the parry slightly, you're dead. If he's gonna switch fast, and some enemies do tend to do so, from high stance back to low stance, you will not be able to. You are parrying, but you're mistiming it. He's doing his quick attacks. You're dead. Not only that, but you're contradicting yourself by saying so many nonsense. Like this is another example of people don't know what they're talking about in this community. Instead of giving an factual evidence, they just spit their either something that they have seen was able to something that they have seen or they have successfully implemented themselves sometimes, but not consistently. What do I mean by that? You need to practice timings. Yes, every weapon has their different timings. Every parry has its own unique timing. Yes, that's the enemy.
Every boss, every stance.
Every stance.
Like, so, say for example, like here's a boss.
Like he says, no, take a look at this. Pay attention to the stance and weapon of your opponent.
Wait, but
how many?
Come on, pay attention to the following. Like there are in total, like I would say, like this, like around 20 to 30, maybe 40 humanoid enemies and bosses. Like to add on top of that, each one of them like has 3 stances, for example, and each one of those stances will going to have like 2 to 3 moves. So in total, you need to be paying attention and memorizing like more than 200 or something like situations, not considering like buffs, debuffs, or something like that. Or maybe you're using like, if you're using lightning and slot talisman, this is also like fucks up your timings and all that kind of stuff. Like you have to, you are asking like, even in Souls games, you cannot consistently pull off parries all the time. Like you just cannot do that. And here, it's
even though objectively it's easier to do in Souls games and in Sekiro compared to Nioh.
And it's clunky, like it's really
We don't need to explain. He contradicts himself in this abstract. He's saying it's easier to pull off, but then he's saying myriads of options that you have to take into account by saying good, and then he says like, good luck doing this. You need to parry immediately. My guy, can you give me an example of successfully parrying consistently such bosses like not slow ones? Let's name the fast one. Ren Hayabusa, especially when he does like fast attacks, and it has to be done in the depths without, or you could do it without Stone of Penance. Consistently, you know, like in the high, low, mid stance when he's switching up, especially weapons from sword to claws. Such bosses as Minamoto no Yoshitsune, Minamoto no Yorimitsu, again with all the fast attacks. Like I wanna just see, because when I was watching some of the hardcore, I could say like this, like streamers who are heavily into grinding this game over and over again on in depth in the Stone of Penance 9+. You know how many times they were using parries? Maybe 1 out of 100 times. If they know like this attack like is super slow and it's parryable, everything else, it's a freaking instant death if you try to parry, at least if you're wearing light armor. So saying that they are reliable and then saying myriad of options that you have to take into account doesn't help anyone and doesn't encourage anyone to use parries in this game.
Yeah, and the reward is very shitty.
And the reward, like I've told you, is for a parry. If we were to talk about like damage, which is 10 times more than your regular like critical attack or heavy attack, then that's one thing. But you don't get anything like too extensive out of those parries. So that's trash. Like this argument, like it's total trash. You're contradicting yourself for some reason, and you're just confusing the other person. Let's read the other ones. I think it's more like you wrote in the first comment. It's simply not that great. Many games like Soulsborne parrying just give you great edge in combat, and Bloodborne parrying enemy allows it to visceral them. Dark Souls allows it to crit hit, and Nioh is not that important. Yeah, true. It's not rewarding, simply because of the factor that the damage it's not existent. You clearly don't know what you're talking about. You said most players, but it's first time I heard from anyone about parry being bad. What do you mean it's first time? Like, go look at the streamers who play, again, go look at the streamers who play non-stop, grind 24/7, depths, underworld depths, with or without Stone of Penance. You'll see how often, especially against bosses, they parry. Most players don't have any problems performing this. It's very simple, you just need to practice your timing. And what does he give? What the hell is this? Nioh parry. Why are you oh my god!
You seriously, little mother of fuck?
And you like, showing the
wait. I have something to tell. Like, if I will ever going to fucking see another fucking person who is going to show me a combo video or a parry video, or any type of guide video, and the place where he's going to be showing this is going to be a tutorial mode. I'm gonna fucking spit in his face. I'm gonna fucking spit in his face and I'm gonna beat his balls off. Like, you fucking piece of shit! That's not a boss, that's not a fucking battle scenario, that's a fucking dojo mission against a fucking pre-rendered enemy.
Guys, you have to, if you don't know the context, basically on the previous podcast we talked about how stupid it is to show something that you wanna do on the monsters in dojo missions. That's just because the power of those monsters in dojo missions are shit. It's shit. They are totally garbage compared to the most challenging enemies and bosses that you would fight in the game. It's just for the very basic stuff. Period. Parry, it's not the basic stuff. It's an advanced technique that has a little to no effort, little to no reward, excuse me. And person is showing off this by giving a link for a parry that's done in a dojo doesn't prove anything.
Parry in Nioh is super strong in right hands. On the second clip you can see how devastating simple parry can be. You motherfucker.
On a regular dojo mission monster.
You fucking piece of shit. You seriously, like... It would be I wouldn't want to go downhill against this person, but... You know, a combo on perform on Nagaki or a simple yokai is also very fucking deadly, especially if you know how to use this and this.
My points exactly. It would be the same as to parry a gaki and say, look how devastating the parry is. You are not proving anything here in this example. If a person know what he or she is talking about when it comes to parries, then he or she would explain to you that against most challenging bosses and opponents in the underworld and depths, they are garbage. The reward is not there.
What is also important in this, like, he says, like, the damage and, like, zero key and stuff like that. Guy, you are showing... Like, this particular GIF image shows you, you need to memorize parry. Why do I need to do this? I can grab myself a rifle, I can shoot this mofo in the head with the rifle, and perform a finisher move, and I will going to kill him. I don't need to do like any of those like stuff. I can play, for example, I'm a Kusa user. Instead of risking my ass being killed by this enemy, I can grapple him, I can knock him on the ground, and I can finish him off.
Not only that, no. You don't need to be. You don't need to even do that. Like, let's say from the other side of the argument, I'm a heavy armor user with dual swords. If the situation in most cases allow me to do so, I can just tank through most of the stuff. And again, just block and counterattack, and I will be in a more. I will have more control over the situation than if I were to risk everything on a parry just to get blown up for this.
This doesn't teach you on how to parry against the boss. This doesn't teach you on how this works in a combat situation, say for example in depths. Say you are being attacked by more than one enemy.
Wait a second. There's another thing that it doesn't take into account, this example that he provides. In the previous abstract, he's saying like you need to use to the timing, right? And then he's saying stuff like this. But correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that human enemies, maybe they do, but stance switching is not something they would do quite often in regular enemies compared to bosses. Bosses tend to do this way more often, and enemies, especially the bosses, in the underworlds, the red one, the bosses from the dojo mission, like Hattori Hanzo, or the boss with Kusarigama that you have. Anyway, enough talking. This doesn't prove anything. Barry is still trash. My guy, you're doing a disservice to the username like Clara Lee. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it wrong, but anyway, Barry is not reliable source, period, in Nioh. Let's see what's next. I presented a proof, don't have anything much else to say, I'm not entitled, more like trying to prove that's not really the case. It's not a proof. We already debunked it. Dojo mission. Dojo missions, anything that is going on in dojo missions has nothing to do with the real combat situation. It's mostly for tuning in your base stuff, because dojo let me put it like this. If the dojo mission would have allowed you to put such enemies, more tougher enemies, and practice against bosses from the very end game, it would be one thing. But this is like you didn't present anything, someone parrying in you. If I were clips, I'm doing back 10 times in a row, was doing the parry. It was me, and yes, it's 100% accuracy. Well, yeah, Nioh's pretty high skill ceiling, that's a good thing if you can perform a simple parry on your end, not the game. The problem is, again, you are trying to misdirect and misguide a user who had tested something. It is the same thing that happened to me, by the way, with boss skills. We talked about it. I tried boss skills. They're shit. Like, some of them are good, but some of them are complete trash. And the ones that were trash, the other users were saying to me, well, you need a myriad of options, like the stars has to be aligned, there has to be a full moon, you had to howling at the moon for this to be like a complete accurate representation of damage of the skills. Whereas I can literally just press like one 2-second channel water sword and do like 5 times more damage compared to the boss skill, and I would preserve my anima meter. It's the same thing.
Like, he is saying it from the perspective of a person like, it isn't me doing it.
No, he said
totally
no. He said like he was doing it. But what's the point? It's dojo mission.
Yeah,
who cares about dojo mission? Who the freaking
dojo missions, like this, like I simply don't understand, like, why.
And I like he corrects himself. It was me, 100% accuracy. I'm not here to argue, just stating the facts. You can parry everything with 90% accuracy.
Bipolarity.
Nioh is way more reliable with parry. No, it's not. Sekiro is a joke when it comes to stability. Sekiro is a better rhythm game when it comes to the stuff that enemies are throwing at you. Yes, it's too restrictive compared to Nioh, but in terms of the stuff that opponent is gonna do, it's more forgiving compared to Nioh. So do not confuse those two things. Continue. Oh no, I actually pressed on the wrong stuff. Let me actually scroll quickly down to the point where we had stopped. So yeah, the parry stuff, do not for a second consider parry a good option in Nioh. It's trash. Especially since you cannot parry yokais. I wouldn't have mind for them, for parries exist as a whole, but the reward has to be way more beneficial than it is right now.
I want parry against command grabs.
Okay,
That's what I would want to see. Well, against this, for example, like you can try to practice, and it would be
more stances
helpful.
that you can master and interchange. Doesn't make any sense.
You already have 3 stances. 4 stances.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense because maybe just again overhaul and improvement on the already existing stances than more stances to begin with. Deterministic crafting for sure. Deterministic means like more well fleshed. Change the settings, keep the combat, improve the end game. It's almost perfect. Just make the underworld better. Again, this is not a great feedback.
Almost perfect.
Almost perfect. Just make the better. How? Like, you don't have to write paragraphs of texts. You could say like in a couple of sentences like what's good about it and what's bad, just in general.
Add unique missions. Add more of the unique like enemies. Make some sort of
unique bosses and so on and so forth. Unique rewards. Like
unique like situations.
Can you imagine like developer
more buffs? I was speaking about this like on the stream. So in this game, like in Underworld and Depths, there are only 4 buffs in total. 4 buffs in total. And they always like 4 of the same buffs that only work in boss. Like make it like 12 buffs, and they are going to be like randomly collect something.
It's not only. It's just we're giving example, but the shorter version is when you're writing something like this. Like you need to imagine like you being a developer, like you're reading this, and you're saying, okay, I'm gonna make it better. How? Well, I'm gonna read the first sentence. It's almost perfect. So maybe by better he means just add more stuff.
Yeah, maybe like cutting 900 from 999 missions to 138 was too much.
Yeah, let's do 666, like, you know.
Yeah, sure. Like, here's your more and better.
Sure. Less grind, holy fuck, especially for shits like smithing textile cores. Investing in Nioh 2 and going beyond becomes a real chore after a while because of garbage drop rates. True. Also a better inventory system. True.
Not just garbage drop rates. Garbage drop rates and also garbage random system. Make it more predetermined or allow us to change whatever we want to whatever we want. Fuck this. No, this will going to create overpowered builds. I don't give.
I mean, yes, you can have RNG, but only for the drop rate in general, not for the traits on the items, for the parameters on the items that you are either crafted or grinded yourself. Clear story, true. Love Nioh 2 story when they connected it with William, but that's me. Nioh 2 story connected with William just for the sake of appease the one, to please the one who played the first game. Nothing more, nothing less. It wasn't a well-crafted connection, like, oh, look at how well-designed it was. It was just for the sake of, like, again, like, pleasing the ones that played the first game. It would be the same as to say, Resident Evil 3 story is, like, loved how it connected with Resident Evil 2 by presenting Police Station. What? Like, it doesn't have anything to do with how well story is developed, but that's just me. William was good because it was a made character inserted into the again, stuff that made Nioh 2 story good. It's the fact that it was built around already existing Nioh 1 story. Good that it was built around already existing lore. They just invented all the supernatural stuff. Yep. It was already created partially for them.
In Nioh 2, they wrote mumbo-jumbo story with the shitty protagonist, with the shittiest fucking characters.
Yeah, but I don't want to delve
based on good
much.
Historical figures. For those of you who want this, like, oh, you have to know history. I know those historical figures. The stuff that the game showed me is not the historical figures. This is shit. This is shit that they told me. Like, seriously.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. A lot of these comments on want to make us even more overpowered, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in my eyes it's not a good thing. I agree to buff the RNG. No, to nerf.
Fix, I think.
To
he
fix,
wants to
yeah,
fix
because the buff means opposite. Took me forever to get all this meeting text and hidden skills. And I saw comments saying would be able to use a Tanto, or whatever it means. Open world, no. Open world, no. Bad idea. Customizable colors, whatever. Non-linear endgame content. True, something a bit more options than the straight level progress. Maybe regions where could, again, something that already exists in the Path of Exile, Last Epoch, Grim Dawn to an extent you could tune in to have it more or less the same in Nioh with less RNG dependent and so on and so forth. Underworld and Depths were not the upgrade I wanted to see from Nioh 1. Yeah. When the game releases for everyone, not call it Souls-like. I don't know. This game is not. Nioh uses element of Souls-like, but if a person's saying that it's a Souls-like type of game, again, this is something that triggers those kind of individuals because they by default think that, oh, he or she or a player in general, maybe at least before he plays it, is gonna believe that it will play exactly like the Souls-like game. Like after the first region, you'll realize that it's not truly a Souls type of game. But I don't see any point of you being like aggressive to
I like the next,
type of
the
game.
next, like the three comments.
Fewer bullshit human bosses with effectively infinite key that constantly dodge, then throw out strings of active skill attacks. Not only active skill attacks, but also strings of attacks. Like I'm looking at you, Ren. And stop suddenly attacking, hyper-arming through attacks when you're on the boat. Yeah, that's exactly that I was talking about. And the response for that I was getting for that is, oh, yeah, otherwise the game is gonna be too boring when you just simply non-stop pressuring the enemy. They can... Who the hell talks about non-stop pressuring? You could invent a system, or at least make it place a system where the game resets to neutral, period, like Combo Breaker that we have mentioned. And certain bosses already do so. They are immediately stands like this, like, huh, and if something pushes you away from them to the point where you cannot immediately attack, and you know, like, there's gonna be something flying in your direction. It already has here, but the problem is that when they're doing so, they also have the hyper armor. The same thing has when they're activating their living weapon, when they're doing something charge attacks and so on and so forth. It's so many variables that you cannot enjoy or say like the melee combat system is like some superb, or some say some nonsensical stuff like, oh, it's better than Devil May. Yeah, but even Ninja Gaiden combat system is better than Nioh 2 in terms of the hit advantage, the hits themselves, the juggles, and so on and so forth. The sudden switches to hyper armor in the middle of getting staggered by a combo are just so infuriating. True, I agree to that. Hyper armor when they're wearing light armor. Hyper armor when they have like a naked skin can too happen in Nioh 3. Who knows?
Just hyper armor.
Just hyper armor in general. More skills to use for weapons, not the lame passive skills, but truly cool skills. Introduced way of reroll.
I would say like this again, not just more skills. About passive skills, this hasn't really been touched upon, but passive skills of most of the weapons, like say for example my weapon that I was using, Kusarigama, I don't like the fact that at least like 10 passive skills in the skill tree are related to you have to be at 30% health or below to get them working.
Yeah, to get the advantage.
There is almost zero skills that work, passive skills that work in the range from 30% to 90%, I believe. There is like some full HP buffs that you can get from the passive skills, but there is this giant gap between 30% and that full HP that is not covered by any buffs. So you either at the low HP when you can get insta-killed and you get buffs, or you're at full HP at which you will probably never going to stand more than for 1 or 2 seconds. So it's really dumb. I don't like the passive skills on weapons whatsoever. I fucking hate them.
True. It's again another kind of bad feedback in my opinion. Every feature from Nioh 2, but just a little bit better. Again, by saying this, he goes later on by explaining that locations could be tighter, a little bit more, had a little bit more variation by including like southern and far north regions of Japan. But my guy, are you saying that every feature doesn't have flaws in the Nioh 2 type of game outside of location? Had you played the how long have you played the game? Have you played the game fully, or are you acknowledging that do you capable of acknowledging that those features actually have flaws that needs to be improved? Because if you were not, then it's not a good feedback. Again, like this is just a outside of location comment. Yeah, I do agree that it needs some variety. Every feature from Nioh 2, this is again something that we already mentioned a million times before. Adding more doesn't solve the problem. See, yes, I know that the previous days, the formula of successful sequels and prequels were the same but more. But this, the same, it has to be on the good side of things. When you add Nioh, when you put Nioh into factor, if you say the same but more, sorry, but your game is gonna be even more alienating everyone than when the Nioh 2 actually is doing the same thing right now.
I'm more sad about, like, I've seen in those comments, like, people are saying, like, I want the gnat, I want nunchucks, I want the rifle that shoots multiple times. Nobody wants dual pistols. Like, we had enemies with dual pistols. I want dual pistols too. Like, I want to have, like, a ranged weapon. Like, I want to have two pistols. Like, we have bow, we have cannon, we have rifle. I want pistols. Like, it would be stylish. Like, pam pam. Like the Psycho Clan, those guys with two pistols. It sounds cool in my personal opinion.
True. The guys are talking about being in Japan. We talked about that. Open world, hands down, no. Maybe 3 weapon slot instead of 2. Why would anyone want 3 weapons? No, that would be too
3 weapons, 5 soul cores, 5 guardian spirits. Yes.
More difficulty scaling or better. To me, I feel like the Nioh is hardest at the beginning, and then in the final difficulty levels, most of the content in between is dreadfully easy. True, because and feels more like a hack and slash than shoot. Doesn't necessarily feel like a hack and slash per se,
more
but
like skipper mode.
Yeah. Has exceptional combat, but when the enemies are pushovers, it stops being rewarded. Exceptional, that's a far stretch, but some enemies are doing it like a pushover. Examples would include such enemies like Gakis, or not only Gakis, if you say like Underworld Soldiers.
Yeah, we have mentioned this, that
Aberrant Soldiers.
In this game, enemies, bosses can be divided into
punching bags and hyper armor ones.
Basically, those that provide you 0 problem and those that are going to kick your ass.
Having the ability to jump and have attacks or combos resolve around it. Same with Dark Souls 4. There isn't gonna be. Sorry to disappoint you, my guy, but Dark Souls 4, there isn't gonna be no Dark Souls 4 simply because after Elden Ring, From Software is gonna be focusing on Armored Core. That's the futuristic style game about robots and whatnot. I don't know, maybe in anime format, who knows. But jumping attacks and combos, yeah, but you had to overhaul the combat in general to make it feel like Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden.
First of all, they would have to create a new not the engine. No, they have to create new engine, because on the current engine, everything that is revolved around like jumping up and being airborne is buggy mess with hitboxes of your characters and enemies being on the ground and you being hit even though you're up, like off the ground. Like
not with everyone. Like with Devil May Cry, it works perfectly fine. Ninja Gaiden 2, God of War 2.
Nioh. I'm speaking about Nioh 2. How in Nioh 2 the current game engine doesn't.
No, but I mentioned like you had to have the overhaul for the combat and the engine included. So yeah, more open world again. PvP, no. Jumping and swimming mechanics, maybe to an extent. All weapons and all active skills should have a good target tracking. Yeah, true. Get rid of the levels and make it open world. So many open world comics. Ancient China, player versus player PvP. Nope. There was the PvP in Nioh 1. Who cares? PvP. Here's the thing. I don't know about the community in Dark Souls in terms of the PvP ones per se, but at least in Dark Souls you would have more PvP, more fun in PvP if you just do the gang squad tactics, right? Or you're trying to protect the boss like in Dark Souls 3. This one-on-one PvP, especially with which doesn't have dedicated servers and good solution for the ping problems, I don't think it's a good idea for the combat system in Nioh, especially since it's more fleshed out in comparison to Dark Souls. Even in Dark Souls, like, it's a laggy buggy mess when somebody's fighting one-on-one, to the point where there the hitbox problem actually like got multiplied. Nioh 2, it would have been even more aggravating. Open world doesn't level with you. Less loot bullshit, just 6 hours of menu crap. True, not with open world.
Everything else is amazing.
Just some more enemies, boss types. Maybe should remove sets like 2 new move types. Yeah, that's not, again, open world and less loot bullshit. That's only meaningful feedback so far that I've got from your comment. Star effects to be unique stat you force the weapon with. Just add them to temper options. Tempering on everything that has RNG, drop, fuck you, soul cores, ninjutsu, not to BOP early game. Same released it on PC, probably more that I can think of. Star effects, yeah, great. Temper options too, but you have to select them manually. Ninjutsu, I don't know, guys. We talked about it. That's the basics. It's not about the fact that it's being OP, it's more so about the fact that maybe they could add some passives, maybe, that players needs to, players that is aware of the mechanics needs to put some points into them to make ninjutsu more viable or very powerful at the early game, so that you can go through the game itself and not struggle that much. But I don't know about like it being like that OP in general. So the triangle after square are cool, but what if we could get different moves? I don't see a problem of different moves, of adding different moves per se, if you tune them in, if you make the testing of it have clear advantages and disadvantages, not just that we have discussed in combat. On paper it sounds pretty cool and flashy, but reality quickly proves you wrong, to the point of it being very bad ones. X really need more loves, yeah. Give it some love in terms of visual, armor variety.
Dude, this armor variety and people want more customization. I am going to just give Team Ninja like a hint. Guys, allow modding for the game. Simple.
Yeah, at least for the skins.
Just like you can mod skins, all of the questions with like changing colors will going to just go away.
I want dungeons? I don't want dungeons, and this concept could be, with the way how the game works right now, dungeons could be very, might as well be the same repetition of the underworld / depth stuff that we already have. Better inventory management.
Absolutely.
Yep. Still overwhelming. Get it what you get. What you want to say. Option to be able to use living weapon. Yeah, true. Better and more varied level design. My guy, that's actually something that I would want it to do too. Not that it should get rid of the whole map and level select thing, though. I don't mind that it's not open world. Not every game needs to be. Yeah, level design is where Nioh is at its weakest. Weakest level design? Not maybe the weakest, but it's definitely not. It's definitely one of their weak points. Better story, even reading all the lore, it still get confusing. Yeah, true. Better armor, Nioh 100 rate armor, and I hated most of the options in 2. We need more accurate armor, masks included. I don't know about that. We'll have a lot of ideas, but for me to go back in time to the first and second shogunate, and oh, that's the history of Japan. Inventories, bigger inventory spaces. Doesn't really a good solution in my opinion, just because of the fact that it will still preserve the same problem that we already has with the clusterfuck of managing a lot of items without having the ability to manually type as well as have loot filters to begin with.
We played as human, half yokai. The next would be a full yokai turn. Yes, you're gonna play as Gaki, my boy.
And the game will begin when the Gaki is going to kill William because of other ones that he killed with the golf club.
Yeah, there is your. You wanna be a yokai? You wanna be a yokai?
Sure. I wouldn't say open world, but completely interconnected. Yeah, true. Then just more interesting levels in general. A way less convoluted gear development system. Jesus, that's a lot of to get to read through right now. Simplified inventory manager, simpler stats. At least, last but not least, the blacksmith shouldn't feel like it's the primary game over combat. It's not. When you get, I don't know if you already got to the way of the Nioh, but the moment you get to the way of the Nioh and start getting your gear by not necessarily crafting but collecting it. Maybe he was meant that he is regularly visiting him for the soul matching and doing all the other stuff when it comes to tempering, but blacksmith is just it's the supplemental thing. It's not the main one, it's the supplemental thing. A return of yokai shift? What do you mean it never went away? What do you mean return? Maybe even play Hide? What? More customization options, yada yada yada. I'm trying to judgment cut type thing for sword. Change. Yeah, sure. I would like to see the gear sets revamped so that they have more personality and not have X life as 2 pieces bonus. Most 2 and 4 piece could be combined. Yeah, true. Like in comparison to something like Grim Dawn or a lot of other hack and slash RPGs, the parameters or the traits that you would get by equipping entire sets are kind of like cluster in general. It's more of an increase of your base health, damage, defense, something that you're already having by wearing this armor to begin with. I personally would like to have something as, utility or new option to the skill that you're already using. Like you're using Sign of the Cross, maybe it will create like the cool effect that will deal even more damage, or that will stagger enemies, or doing some kind of unique debuffs. If you're using like a 2-piece set, if you're using a 4-piece set, the startup frames would be better, and so on and so forth. Restart the level after completing it for Amrita farming instead of going in and out again. The hell uses Amrita farming? There's like a million of Amrita by the end game, and it's not like, maybe if you're focused too much on the blacksmithing at the mid game and in the early game too for some reason, then yeah. But at the late game, this problem goes away. Reduce RNG a bit. Reduce RNG a lot.
By a lot.
It's hard enough at getting star effects.
A lot.
It's not only about star effects, guys. We had this topic before on the previous podcasts. You can watch it at your own leisure if you want to. It's also about the rare effects. Rare effects are super powerful, and it's hard to get them. And like, it has to be, you have to at least have the option to add at least one to
Lock
your
stats should be possible to remove, other stats should be possible to be changed. I don't give a damn about how pricey the changing of stats should be. It should be present without this randomness.
Same mechanics in another universe with different enemies and bosses. For the rest, it's perfect.
Yeah, of course.
What a meaningful comment. Platforming and swinging? Yeah, platforming. Sure. Yokai Shift, Gothic setting in the mid-80s in the UK. You will be... I know where the desire is coming from. Maybe not necessarily from Bloodborne, but from another game in the similar environment. Yeah, well, okay. Never mind, I haven't read it to the end. So yeah, you basically want another Bloodborne with the combat system, or the systems in general from Nioh 2. Tune down the grind even more. Why does it have an open world? That would be the best. The difficulty system. Wow, this 5 difficulties. And this guy, again, like, you can clearly see that I want to see a complete rework of the difficulty system. 2, we talked about it. 5 difficulties is frankly way too much and just leaves me burnt out. I had this feeling when going from DLC to DLC with 2, and I can imagine how much worse it's gonna do on sitting to get end-game content with the completed version. Yeah, we talked about it. If the game would have had 3 difficulties with way more compacted, like the content in general, it would have been more. It would have benefited the game and the community. to the point where new features that they have added, it would have been more fleshed out, not necessarily fleshed out. Like you will see the amount of the new stuff, and it will excite you to play, to eagerly try something new and to collect those more stuff instead of, oh, here's a sprinkle of new stuff, but you already keep forgetting about this just because of the fact that it becomes irrelevant the moment you step into the next difficulty and so on and so forth.
Yeah, 5 difficulties is it's a boredom land. Like, seriously. Especially if you consider, like, with each DLC, previous difficulties, like, losing its point. Like, there is no point in playing them, because all of the stuff that you get on higher difficulties is going to be mind-numbingly better than what you have right now. So there is absolutely no point to even, like, have those. It's like it's especially if you play like a complete edition.
Yeah, but this guy actually mentioned this because like the complete edition. But the thing is, if you look at the amount of upvotes and downvotes for those type of comments, even the guy that previously wrote like a massive post explaining like the this is a good feedback to the player. How much attention does it has? Literally almost next to no attention.
Don't read anything. There is this like.
Even this dialect, but it's not only about the fact that they're not reading anything. It's the fact that they're saying, they're seeing. I would rather say, like, what's the point of downvoting Tune Down the Grind even more when my overwhelming majority knows that the RNG is bad? It should be like upvoted. Same thing here, like better and less repetitive levels. It got downvoted when in reality it's objectively something that has been going on in the game. Same thing here, like the last comments, like less RNG, true, less difficulties, more levels, more enemy variety. Graphics upgrade may be too much of a stretch considering you need to change the game engine, maybe from that perspective too, as well as loosening up the primary currencies too, because of the fact that it does have the effect of it being overwhelm you at first. You think that you would use like millions amounts of currencies by the end game, but in reality you would use only certain amounts of it. The rest is just there for not necessarily trash, but it accumulates automatically and there is not even a need for you to use them. But those ideas are not getting the necessary amount of attention. See, like, why? Because what you have, there is a good comment at the top, at the very top, when we started this whole argument, when we discussed everything connected with it, and the whole idea behind it all is the fact that you can clearly see that yes, there are some good, there were still, even in this community that are overwhelmed by toxic individuals, there were still some good people left. It's like it sounds cliche and ironic, like from some kind of movie, but still like as if I'm describing Gotham City. but you can tell not only by the way how they write, but also by the way how much attention some of their posts, the one that contains good ideas, are making. Developers are not receiving the information that they need to receive in order to improve the game, in the right direction. It's either stuff like, oh, more but better, or the comment that yes, there is a good idea, but excuse me, maybe I'm not right, maybe I've done something wrong, maybe not idea it's not that bad, when all this person wrote is to have less RNG, and people downvote him for that. It's the same people that justify the application of the usage of RNG, or saying, oh, it's gonna be like super easy for you to farm those kind of perfect scrolls or perfect gear, when they're using hacks, the cheat engine, and many other programs themselves, and saying, oh, everything's good for me, like it will, just like with Perry, that we debunked this whole stuff. I'm doing it 100% of the time, but you can do this like 90% of the time.
In the end, I'm doing 90% of the time in
dojo mission.
Yes.
Yes, in dojo mission. Great, you showed like very clever display of skill by performing the parry on the dojo mission. on a samurai. Great, like on a regular samurai warrior, which is the, if maybe not the most generic, but one of the like mid-tier, like slightly below average type of enemy in terms of difficulty. And this all leads, this accumulating factor of the community being like toxic as a whole leads to the fact that the next project that they had been working on and that they were ready to give somewhere in the nearest future may not look as good as you would want to. Doesn't matter if you are a fan of Nioh, doesn't matter if you're a fan of Final Fantasy, as hint hint, I'm slowly but surely wrapping things up for today and preparing you both mentally and physically for the fact that we are going to be on at the very last podcast on the next week. We will talk about the Happy Chaos Edition when it comes to Final Fantasy and plans. We're going to be analyzing not the trailer, because to be honest, the trailer it's trash and it received all the infamy that it deserved already. We're gonna be looking at the gameplay, boys and girls. We're gonna be looking how evolved this system of both from the perspective of the ones who played Final Fantasy, or at least like team RPGs, action RPGs to begin with, how evolved it is in comparison to Nioh, because some people actually, I don't know in what state of mind they was thinking about it. Some people have said that it is the evolution of the ideas from Nioh 3. Can you believe it? Like, it's like I'm laughing just by saying this out loud. Anyway,
fucking just like a hit, like fucking evolution to like evolution of casting magic. Hold down the casting magic button, you will going to charge it, and it will going to increase in its level. Wow.
Yeah, but if you are a Final Fantasy fan or a player, you know how the higher tiers of magic works. It basically throws out of the window the stuff, some stuff that was already present at every Final Fantasy game that used magic, where you need to purchase, first of all, the new and more powerful spells, and secondly, the fact that you need to not necessarily stand down, but the fact that you leave yourself wide open for enemies' attacks when you're casting any kind of spells, because you cannot cast them in an instant, but your teammates are trash. Well, this is something that I have noticed from the gameplay, and they cannot protect you very well. It creates more question than answers in terms of how effective magic would be in the new Final Fantasy magic archetype, magic mage build as a whole, and magic as in general. And but this is something that we will discuss in the next podcast.
Again, absolutely not surprised at something like this happening.
Just my closing words throughout the whole thing. In general, like the summary, like I did on the previous podcast. Do I recommend for you to get involved with the Nioh 2 community? Only in places like Facebook groups, Discord, or some of the comments like under like YouTube section. Stay the hell away from Reddit, unless if you want to have like some kind of meaningful constructive discussion. You can go there just for shits and giggles if you want to kiss the game's butt, or just have fun at pretending that everything works perfectly, post some kind of artwork or whatever the case. But do not, under any circumstances, do not, especially if you are a new content creator, for the second, think that the Reddit is the good place when it comes to Nioh 2, at least to have to share your criticism or to have a meaningful discussion. Again, this is not me trying to discourage you from playing the game. It's just my advice that you could use or could not use in regards to Nioh 2 community as a whole. In simple
words, like know your foes, know your surroundings, know what you have to deal with, like because like information and knowledge are very powerful tools to have.
Yeah, true. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be concluding today's podcast. Once again, as a reminder, those of you who had watched on Patreon, thank you for supporting us. And do note, those of you who will watch this or have watched it on YouTube, there is an ability to watch ahead of time the content if you support us directly on Patreon page, link to which you'll find directly below in a separate Twitch tab. Also, keep in mind that when it comes to everything else, like the news that we would like to share throughout our social pages, you will find the links to them also, again, in the separate tab down below, as well as having the opportunity to watch exclusive content. For everything else, there's our YouTube link, where you can, YouTube channel, or link to it, where you can find other content, Nioh 2 related, like other podcasts, gameplay, as well as many other type of games. Go ahead, we're welcoming you all to watch everything at your own leisure, something that you would be interested in. And once again, I would want to thank you who have watched and or listened us today. Whether you did this from the beginning, middle, or the end doesn't matter. Hopefully you have some fair share of fun, especially when we went through the comment section, or share our own unique and experienced stories. With that said, I wish you all the best, ladies and gentlemen. Stay sound, stay healthy and cheerful, and we'll be seeing you all on the next podcast on the next week, when we'll be discussing Happy Chaos Edition style. Bye guys, my name was Alexander, also Alexander Yevitz. Have a great weekend.
Yes, from my part, I would also want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for understanding where are we going with those type of podcasts, because yes, they do go like over the top. Yes, they do like they do go into the route where it's kind of hard to stay on the neutral ground, where you don't have to express your thoughts in such an angry fashion. It's just kind of hard. But again, sometimes it just doesn't matter. Like, fight fire with fire or fight fire without using it. It's just not going to matter in the end. Like, in the end, our criticism of the community doesn't specifically our criticism of community goes beyond just to call out those people who are toxic or stuff like that. We want to just show you what you would have to deal with if you still don't know what you have to deal with, and how the community in general influences the experience of newcomers, experience of developers who are in search. Oftentimes they're in search for some helpful feedback from the community that plays their game, and if the only thing that they see is what we have described today, and this is not going to result good stuff. In what it results when it comes to their new project, you're going to learn next week. But as if for now, thank you for being here today, thank you for listening, and have a great time.